Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kahler family. James Kraig Kahler was born in Weatherford, Texas in 1963, and his future wife, Karen Kahler, was born in the same city 2 years later. They met in the early 1980s while attending a university in Texas. At the time, Kraig was a senior studying engineering, and Karen was a freshman in the humanities department. Despite their different fields of study, they quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. After graduating, they had a small, intimate wedding with close friends and family. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, followed by Lauren in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, with a higher-than-average income for their area. In 1999, Kraig received a lucrative job offer from a major utility company in Weatherford, which coincided with the birth of their son, Sean. Kraig adored his son and, with his increased salary, purchased a spacious house in the city's most prestigious neighborhood and a family car. Karen stayed at home to care for their children, and Kraig became the primary breadwinner. From the outside, their family appeared to be living a perfect life. Their 3 children have also had many successes in their fields. Emily and Lauren are talented in sports and music. Emily studies at a prestigious pharmacy college and Lauren hopes to attend a conservatory. Sean, on the other hand, showed a keen interest in mathematics and had dreams of becoming an archaeologist. The family's home life seemed idyllic, Kraig providing for the family and Karen taking care of the household and raising the children. However, the family was struggling with hidden problems. In 2007, Karen confided in her sister Linda, revealing that she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown due to Kraig's controlling behavior. Kraig exerted total control over Karen's daily life, demanding a detailed account of every expense, no matter how small, and requiring her to report her whereabouts at all times. The family lives on a strict schedule, with Kraig setting their daily routines, including bedtime, wake-up time, meal times. This rigidity makes Karen feel suffocated and trapped. Over time, Kraig's need for control grew stronger. He became more demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move. She felt like she had no time left for herself, there was only duty to complete. Karen tried to meet her husband's demands, hoping he would ease up and they could return to their normal life. However, Kraig seemed to enjoy exerting control and refused to change. Linda was extremely worried about her sister's confide. Like everyone else, she saw Kraig as the ideal husband, father, and family man, only to discover he was a controlling man. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family. Additionally, she and her children relied on Kraig financially. So, she decided to find a job that would give her a stable income. She joined a local gym without telling her husband, using it as an escape to clear her mind and work through her emotions. She spent several hours there every day, scheduling her time around her husband Kraig's work schedule so he wouldn't notice. Not long after, the gym manager noticed her because of her attractive appearance, excellent fitness, and her hard work. Karen was given the chance to work as a fitness with the possibility of a permanent contract. This was a dream come true for her, as she could now get paid for doing something she loved. However, she was worried about how her husband, Kraig, would react when he found out. When Kraig found out about Karen's new job, she thought he would be angry and forbid her to continue. Surprisingly, he received this news calmly and even seemed pleased that she had found a way to make money on her own. He had a few conditions. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and not let her new job interfere with their intimate life. Karen found these conditions acceptable, as she now had more freedom and independence. As Karen settled into her new job, she met a new instructor named Sunny Reese, and they quickly became friends. For Karen, who had spent years at home with little social interaction, Sunny became a trusted confidant. The two women spent time together at work, went for walks, had coffee, and shared heartfelt conversations. But little did Karen know, this new friendship would soon lead to unexpected romance and a complicated love triangle. It didn't take long for Karen and Sunny's friendship to evolve into a romantic relationship. At first, they kept their feelings a secret from everyone. However, after some time, Karen decided it was necessary to be honest with her husband, Kraig. She spent months preparing for this conversation, searching for the right words and worrying about the potential consequences. Eventually, she confessed to Kraig. Kraig's reaction to his wife's revelation was surprisingly calm. However, the next day, he made an unexpected condition for accepting Karen's relationship with Sunny, which was that he wanted to be a part of it. Karen was shocked and unsure of how to respond to her husband's talk. Nevertheless, Kraig took the initiative and began wooing Sunny, sending her flowers and gifts. He seemed to view this as an opportunity to revitalize his intimate life and bring new passion to his marriage. Initially, Karen and Sunny agreed to Kraig's proposal. However, they soon realized that his intentions were aimed at domination. However, their unusual love triangle was short-lived. Kraig demanded that Karen end the affair immediately. Despite this, Karen continued to see Sunny, as she had genuinely fallen in love. After almost 20 years of marriage, Karen seemed ready to leave her husband for someone new. This led to a series of secret actions, including moving to another state, scheduling secret meetings. In an attempt to salvage his family, Kraig thought it best to relocate to another state. He started job hunting, sending out his resume, and soon secured a role as a water director for a large company in Columbia, Missouri, not far from Kansas. Kraig hoped that by moving to a new state, his wife's affair with Sunny would end, and their family life would normalize. However, the summer 2008 move proved challenging for the family, as the kids had to switch schools, make new friends, and adapt to a new city. Although the family was already financially comfortable, Kraig's new job nearly doubled his previous salary from Weatherford. Despite his increased responsibilities and work hours, Kraig mistakenly believed he had successfully removed Sunny from his wife's life. However, Karen and Sunny continued to communicate regularly through calls, texts, and secret meetings. They would meet halfway, spend a couple of hours in a roadside hotel, and then return home. At this point, Karen realized her marriage was over. She no longer loved Kraig, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These clandestine meetings persisted until December 2008. At the New Year's Eve celebration that year, the Kahler family went back to their hometown to reconnect with relatives and friends. Sunny was also in attendance at the gathering. Initially, Karen and Sunny kept a low profile, merely exchanging greetings. As the celebration continues and the alcohol slowly affects Karen and Sunny's behavior, they seem to have no regard for social norms. They became inseparable, openly showing affection by holding hands, sharing romantic glances, they even kissed. Kraig's anger boiled over into fury after Karen publicly humiliated him by revealing her affair at a party attended by dozens of acquaintances. He lashed out at Karen and Sunny before dragging Karen away from the party. In his rage, Kraig lost control and physically assaulted Karen, ripping her dress and slapping her, causing her to fall and hit her head. The incident marked the beginning of the end of their marriage. A few days later, Karen announced she was leaving Kraig and initiated divorce proceedings, seeking custody of their children. Initially, Kraig attempted to apologize and salvage their relationship for the sake of the children. But Karen was resolute. She said they should divorce, causing Kraig to contact friends and family, begging them to convince Karen to reconsider. In the spring of 2009, Kraig and Karen's marriage continued to deteriorate. Despite Kraig's attempts to salvage their relationship, Karen made it clear she was leaving him for Sunny and she had never been truly happy in their marriage. The tension between them escalated into physical violence, with Kraig grabbing Karen during an argument, leaving bruises on her arms. Karen reported the incident to the police, leading to Kraig's arrest. After the incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for the divorce to be finalized. Kraig was devastated by her departure, and even more so when he discovered that his daughters, Emily and Lauren, were siding with their mother. They told him that they had never seen their mother so happy, which Kraig perceived as a betrayal. As a result, he cut off contact with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Despite the ongoing divorce proceedings, Kraig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His desire to control her led him to engage in jealous behavior, including stalking her and attempting to install a hidden camera in her home. To pursue this, Kraig sacrificed his work, initially taking vacation time, then claiming illness, and eventually skipping work altogether without explanation. This reckless behavior resulted in Kraig's termination from his job. Without a steady income, he was forced to move in with his parents as he could no longer afford to live on his own. With ample free time, Kraig began stalking Karen, prompting her to take him to court to obtain a restraining order. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit their 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame police received a distress call about a suspicious van and reports of gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported witnessing a small truck pull up to her house. A man exit the vehicle and enter the house. They claimed to have heard screams and gunshots, but were uncertain. The man then left the house, got back into the truck, and sped away. The neighbors did not attempt to apprehend him, fearing he was armed. When police arrived, they were met by 10-year-old Sean Kahler, who was frantically calling for help. Although Sean was unable to explain what had happened, it was clear that a horrific scene awaited the police. Inside the home, near the front door, Sunny was found lying in a pool of blood but surprisingly still alive despite having 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered the lifeless body of 44-year-old Karen, who had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot at close range in the head. The body of her oldest daughter, 18-year-old Emily, was found between a wall and a couch. It appeared that Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was caught and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Lauren, found in a pool of blood in the second-floor bedroom, was still alive but weakly called for help and repeatedly said that her father was the one who did it. Dorothy and Lauren were rushed to a nearby hospital's intensive care unit. Despite the doctor's efforts, Lauren died on December 1st due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage. Her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. Sean, the only surviving witness, was in shock. Psychologists worked with him, but a thorough interrogation was necessary as he was the only living witness to the tragic events at his great-grandmother's house. Sean recounted that evening, stating that his mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner when he approached her to ask for his favorite pie. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father entered with a shotgun, pointing it at Karen without a word. He shot her, then moved closer and fired again. Sean was initially frozen in horror. His father then turned to Sean but didn't aim the gun. Instead, Kraig stared at Sean silently and intently. Sean realized he had to escape. So he jumped out the open back door. He ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and call for help. However, upon reaching the threshold, he heard several more gunshots. Fearing what he might find inside, Sean hid in a small outbuilding. He heard more gunshots and waited in terror, afraid that his father would come after him. Kraig Kahler was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. As police received multiple reports of a speeding truck, they were able to quickly determine the direction the gunman was heading. At one point, Kraig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement soon caught up with him and apprehended him the next morning. Upon arrest, police found the rifle and ammunition in the back seat of the abandoned vehicle, along with prescription medication for depression and anxiety disorders near the driver's seat. Kraig did not resist arrest and appeared confused and frightened. He admitted to being armed with a gun and a hunting knife, but claimed he did not intend to use them. He also acknowledged that he had done something terrible, which he believed the police already knew about. At the police station, Kraig fully confessed to his crimes and opened up to the investigating officer. He shared how his wife had cheated on him with someone named Sunny and how they had humiliated him in front of friends at a New Year's Eve party. He explained how his attempts to save his marriage had cost him his job and what was left of his self-respect. Kraig became emotional, stating that he didn't know how he had decided to take such drastic action and felt that everyone, including his daughters, had betrayed him. Kraig's trial started in December 2010. Kraig, advised by his lawyer Thomas Heaney, retracted his initial confession. He claimed his actions were due to mental illness and insanity, which was his only defense to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Kraig was in a fragile mental state following a series of personal setbacks. His wife had left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back in with his parents. According to Heaney, these factors led to a breakdown, and Kraig committed the crime while insane, without realizing what he was doing. However, the prosecution found no evidence of insanity or an altered mental state in Kraig's actions. They argued that his actions were calculated, as he had purchased guns and ammunition in advance and went to the victim's house knowing his family was there. He shot each victim twice, ensuring no chance of survival, but intentionally spared his son Sean, allowing him to escape. In August 2011, Kraig was found guilty on all counts and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating that he didn't want his father to die, as he was his only remaining close relative. Despite multiple appeals by Kraig and his lawyers, the verdict has remained unchanged. As of today, Kraig is still in prison, fighting to have the case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. After the death of his mother and sisters, Sean moved in with his grandmother. Now Sean has grown up and he has completed his studies and chosen to stay and work in his hometown. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Natalie Holloway. Natalie Holloway was born on October 21, 1986, in Clinton, Mississippi, to Elizabeth and David Edward Holloway. Her parents had a loving relationship that began in their youth, but after 13 years of marriage, they divorced due to the stresses of domestic life. Following the divorce, Natalie and her brother Matthew lived with their mother, who continued to receive emotional and financial support from their father. In 2000, Elizabeth remarried to George Twitty, a businessman from Alabama, and the family moved to Mountain Brook. The transition was seamless, and Natalie and her brother remained close to their father, visiting him regularly during holidays. Natalie's upbringing was deeply influenced by her family's strong Christian values, which emphasized kindness, modesty, and community involvement. As a result, she developed into a compassionate and humble individual who prioritized her studies and extracurricular activities over social events. Despite her popularity, Natalie chose not to attend parties or go on dates, instead focusing on her goals and aspirations. She was an excellent student, a skilled dancer, and an active member of various clubs, with ambitions to pursue a career in medicine and secure a scholarship to a local university. On May 26, 2005, Natalie joined 123 other students and 7 chaperones on a trip to a beautiful Aruba island. The group of 18-year-olds stayed at the Holiday Inn and spent their time relaxing on the beach, swimming, and enjoying the local restaurants and entertainment. They made the most of their trip, dancing into the early hours of the morning. On the night of May 29th to 30th, Natalie was initially acting normally in socializing while sober. However, after consuming a drink given to her by Joran, her behavior changed, indicating that she may have been under the influence of a substance. The staff at Carlos and Charlie's bar had a positive opinion of Natalie, but viewed Joran unfavorably due to his history of poor behavior, gambling, and substance abuse. Joran had a reputation for renting hotel rooms with friends, where they would invite foreign women and secretly record their activities, later uploading the videos online. Natalie Holloway's disappearance began with a frantic phone call from her mother, Elizabeth Twitty. After failing to reach her daughter, Elizabeth contacted one of the trip's chaperones to report her concerns. Elizabeth's instincts told her something was wrong, as Natalie was a responsible and punctual person who always stayed in touch. When Natalie didn't return to the airport with the rest of the group on May 30th, Elizabeth's worst fears were confirmed. Her belongings, including her phone and passport, were still at the hotel, but Natalie was nowhere to be found. Elizabeth and her husband quickly flew to Aruba to search for their missing daughter. When Elizabeth arrived in Aruba, she discovered more about Natalie's disappearance than the police had. Unfortunately, the authorities didn't seem to be in a hurry to investigate and initially disregarded Elizabeth's concerns. This type of case isn't unusual in Aruba, and the police appeared to be taking it lightly. They implied that it was common for tourists to miss their flights or lose track of their group, and that Natalie was probably just having fun, drinking, or socializing with new people. Natalie's last known whereabouts were on May 30th at around 1:30 a.m., when she left a bar with a man named Van der Sloot. They got into a car with two other young men, and that's the last time she was seen. Natalie and her friends had been spending time at the notorious Carlos and Charlie's nightclub and casino. On one of those nights, she met a 17-year-old local named Joran, who offered to buy her a drink. He then invited her to visit a lighthouse and see sharks in the area. As they left the club, a silver Honda car driven by the Deepak Kalpoe brothers was waiting for them. Elizabeth contacted the police for a second time 4 hours later, and this time she shared some concerning information. As a result, the three individuals were detained. Van der Sloot initially claimed he didn't know Natalie, but eventually admitted he had left the bar with her. According to him, they spent some time driving around, stopped by the beach, and later dropped Natalie off near her hotel. Deepak Kalpoe brothers, 18, and the 21-year-old, confirmed Van der Sloot's story. It's worth noting that the three were questioned together by the police, an approach that seems questionable from a law enforcement perspective. Later on, they altered their statements multiple times. Despite his questionable behavior, Joran was never held accountable for his actions. None of the charges against him went to court. It was later discovered that Joran's father, Paulus van der Sloot, was a well-known lawyer who was seeking a judgeship. Apparently, corruption was prevalent in Aruba, allowing individuals like Joran to avoid accountability for their actions. As the investigation continued, David Holloway, Natalie's father, arrived in Aruba and joined the search efforts, which were led by his ex-wife and journalists. As public pressure mounted, it was discovered that the hotel's surveillance cameras did not capture the suspect's car, and there was no footage of Natalie entering the building on May 30th. This revelation contradicted the statements of Joran and the Kalpoe brothers, who were subsequently called in for questioning again. During this second round of questioning, one of the Kalpoe brothers unexpectedly changed his story, claiming that he had dropped Natalie off at a location before reaching the hotel, which was not covered by surveillance cameras. He also added that he had seen a figure in black approaching Natalie, who was later revealed to be one of the hotel's security guards. On June 5th, investigators took into custody the hotel security staff who were working the night Natalie disappeared. 4 days later, on June 9th, detectives arrested 3 people, including 2 of the Kalpoe brothers, due to suspicious circumstances. While in jail, one of the security guards learned something important from the Kalpoe brothers. Satish admitted that he and his brother Deepak had lied to protect their friend Joran. In reality, they had left Joran alone with Natalie on the beach and had gone their separate ways. The security guards were released on June 13th. A few days later, on June 17th, police detained Steve Gregory Cruz, a DJ who had worked on yacht parties, because they suspected he might be involved in Natalie's disappearance. On June 22nd, Paulus van der Sloot, Joran's father, was questioned and detained by police, but he was released on June 26th along with Steve Cruz because there was not enough evidence. Joran later changed his story again, this time blaming the Kalpoe brothers for Natalie's disappearance. He claimed that he had said goodbye to Natalie near his home and that she had left with the brothers. However, his new story was not believable. The Kalpoe brothers' lawyer responded to Joran's accusations. After a short trial on July 4th, the Kalpoe brothers were released from custody. At the same time, Joran's time in custody was extended by 2 more months. Despite the growing evidence, the police seemed to be ignoring Joran's possible involvement in Natalie's disappearance. Joran van der Sloot was born on August 6, 1987, in Arnhem, Netherlands, to Paulus van der Sloot, a lawyer, and Anita van der Sloot-Hugen, an art teacher. He was one of 3 brothers in a large family that moved to Aruba in 1990. Joran grew up on the island, where he attended the International School of Aruba and excelled academically. He also developed a passion for sports, particularly soccer and tennis, and showed promise in these areas. Joran's family life was complicated. As a child, he was closer to his father, but his relationship with his mother was strained. Anita considered Joran dishonest and struggled to instill good values in him. She remembered him as a rebellious child who frequently ran away from home. As Joran entered adulthood, he began to associate with a questionable crowd and developed a taste for gambling. Despite this, he presented himself as confident and fearless to his friends, which initially impressed many people. However, locals were wary of Joran, sensing that his permissive behavior would eventually lead to trouble. Joran was popular with girls, but he often took advantage of them. Overall, people had mixed opinions about Joran, with some being drawn to his charismatic personality and others being put off by his questionable behavior. As the investigation into the suspects continued, the search for Natalie Holloway remained ongoing. U.S. authorities assisted by closely monitoring the progress and providing significant financial support to aid in the search for the Natalie. Although the Aruban authorities were not pleased with the increased scrutiny, they accepted the funding. On August 26, the police detained the Kalpoe brothers and another young man, but this was unrelated to the case. The arrest was an attempt to intimidate them into talking. All 4 were released on bail on September 3, 2005, and a week and a half later, all restrictions were lifted. Joran van der Sloot spent about 3 months in custody. After his release, he reveled in the notoriety, giving interviews and appearing on TV shows. He claimed Natalie Holloway was flirtatious and offered intimacy, but he declined due to lack of contraception. When questioned about his credibility, Joran threw a glass at the interviewer, showcasing his impulsiveness and aggression. According to the recorder, Joran van der Sloot was confessing to witnessing Natalie Holloway's death on the beach in Aruba. He claimed they were intimate before she lost consciousness, and despite trying CPR, she died. Van der Sloot said he and a friend disposed of her body at sea. Despite the damning recording, Van der Sloot again avoided consequences, quickly denying his statement after it aired. In his 2007 book, The Case of Natalie Holloway, My Own Account, van der Sloot maintained his innocence, apologizing to Natalie's family and providing his account of events, despite ceasing search efforts by authorities. In 2008, 2 new witnesses came forward in the case. One reported seeing Joran and his father on the beach near the Holiday Inn on May 30, 2005, around 4 a.m. Joran appeared disheveled and shirtless. The witness saw them arguing in a car before driving away. However, Paula's had an alibi for the night of Natalie's disappearance. Joran's former girlfriend also came forward, recalling a comment he made about easily disposing of a body. However, Joran was known for lying and exaggerating. Despite these developments, Joran and the Kalpoe brothers were detained and released multiple times. The Holloway family hired a private investigator, Tim Miller, who searched the landfill and discovered oversights by the island's police, including failure to interview Natalie's classmates or hotel room neighbors. Natalie's electronic room key was used several times on the night of her disappearance, and she left behind her rare and expensive mobile phone. A male DNA was found on her toothbrush. The investigation's flaws were exposed. After his father's death, Joran contacted the Holloway family, offering to reveal the truth about Natalie's disappearance for a $250,000 reward. He claimed he wanted to clear his conscience, but was actually blackmailing them. The Holloways, desperate for answers, paid Joran $25,000 to meet with their lawyer, John Kelly, in Aruba. Joran provided a new account of events, claiming Natalie resisted his sexual assault, struggled, and hit her head on a rock after he pushed her. He then buried her body in a building foundation. Elizabeth Twitty followed up on Joran's claims by contacting the police. However, verifying his story was simple, and it quickly became apparent that the house he pointed to had been built long before Natalie's disappearance. As a result, the police concluded that his testimony was insufficient to warrant an arrest. It was widely believed that Joran had fabricated another lie to obtain money, and after receiving the funds, he fled to Peru. In another case, on June 1, 2010, the body of 21-year-old Stephanie Tatiana Flores Ramirez was found in a hotel room in Lima, Peru. She had suffered severe injuries and died from a neck fracture. The case drew significant media attention due to the victim's father being a well-known businessman and former Formula One driver. Surveillance footage quickly identified the perpetrator. Surprisingly, the perpetrator was Joran van der Sloot. He was arrested and taken into custody. He claimed to have met Stephanie at the Atlantic City Casino on May 30th, where they played poker together. They then decided to continue their time in his hotel room, where they gambled at an online casino. Stephanie discovered disturbing information on Joran's laptop while he was in the bathroom. She learned that he was a suspect in the disappearance of Natalie Holloway, which frightened her and made her want to leave. However, Joran caught her and became enraged when he realized what she had found. He physically attacked her until he was certain she was dead. After the attack, Joran showered and left the scene, instructing the staff not to disturb Stephanie, falsely claiming she was sleeping. Her body was found 3 days later, on June 3rd. Joran was caught on June 4th while trying to flee to Chile and subsequently confessed to the crime. The news of the murder shocked the U.S., especially given that it occurred exactly 5 years after Natalie Holloway's disappearance. Elizabeth Twitty, Natalie's mother, was moved by the news, saying that justice had finally been served, but at a terrible cost. On January 11, 2012, Joran van der Sloot was sentenced to 28 years in prison for Stephanie's murder and ordered to pay the Ramirez family $75,000 in compensation. Joran was first imprisoned at Pedras Gordas, but was later moved to Chalip Pala in 2014. During his incarceration, he married a Peruvian woman he met in 2010 while she was visiting another inmate. She believed that Joran had genuinely changed and become a better person, describing him as attentive and gentle during their time together. However, this proved to be a facade, as Joran was actually using her for his own benefit and showed no remorse for his past actions. Meanwhile, Natalie Holloway's family was seeking closure. In June 2011, her father, David Holloway, filed a petition in an Alabama court to have Natalie declared legally deceased. Natalie's mother opposed this move, holding on to the hope that Joran would eventually confess to the crime and face trial. After 2 hearings, Judge Alan King ruled in favor of the declaration, stating that all necessary requirements had been met. On January 12, 2012, the court officially declared Natalie deceased. On June 8, 2023, Van der Sloot was extradited to the United States and taken to the Hoover City Jail in Alabama. The next day, he was charged with extortion and wire fraud, but he denied all charges. However, on October 18, 2023, he changed his plea and admitted to murdering Natalie Holloway. He confessed to killing her on May 30, 2005, by hitting her with a cinder block after she rejected his advances, and then disposing of her body in the ocean where it was likely consumed by sharks. Although Van der Sloot confessed to the crime as part of a plea deal, this confession cannot be used as evidence in court. As a result, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, which will be served at the same time as his existing prison term in Peru. Despite the confession, Natalie Holloway's disappearance remains an open case in Aruba, and her murder has gone unpunished due to a series of cover-ups, corrupt deals, and bureaucratic delays, despite widespread international attention to the investigation. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Borden family. Michael and Catherine met in school, bonding over homework and walks. They became inseparable friends, sharing secrets and learning from each other. Their friendship blossomed into romance, and Michael eventually asked Catherine on a date, declaring his love. They got married in a beautiful ceremony, vowing to love each other through life's ups and downs. After 10 years, the Borden family moved to Lititz, Pennsylvania, a peaceful town founded by the Moravian Church in 1756. The town's faithful residents, including Amish families, sought refuge from modern chaos, living simply and avoiding modern tech. The devout Bordens chose Lititz for its ideal setting to raise children, surrounded by calm and serenity. Michael was an active member of the local church community, where he taught Sunday school lessons. His wife Catherine managed the household and supported him in his community work. While he focused on spiritual growth, Michael also worked as a manager at a printing company to provide for their everyday needs. Over time, they had 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls. Large families like theirs were common in Lititz, where parents hoped to protect their children from the outside world's hardships and dangers. Regular church attendance, youth groups, and homeschooling were a big part of family life. Interactions between families were mostly limited to religious gatherings and celebrations. Michael and his wife built a peaceful home life, raising their kids in faith and discipline. When their eldest sons left for university, the 3 younger kids continued homeschooling, pleasing their parents. Neighbors and friends praised the kind, responsive, and interesting kids: Kara, Caitlin, and Daniel. Kara, the eldest daughter, challenged traditional values in her teens. Despite her dad's disapproval, she joined the soccer team, snuck out to discos, and did forbidden things. Her dad was troubled, and talks often ended in arguments and her running away. Kara sought romantic relationships and showed interest in boys. In 2005, David, 18, and Kara, 14, connected at a homeschooling support group. They formed a close bond, hiding it from their parents, and used social media to exchange messages, pouring their hearts out. They crafted coded messages to keep their communication private. Kara and David's letter exchange wasn't enough, so they secretly met in person. At first, they took innocent walks, but their friendship blossomed into romance. They snuck out to discos, spending nights together. David, older, had experienced first love, while Kara's inexperience made her feelings overwhelming. Her joy was radiant, but her obedience to her parents was feigned, driven by fear of discovery. But sooner or later, every secret is exposed. One day, Kara couldn't keep her secret hidden anymore and confided in her sister. She showed her a photo of David, told her about how they met and how they were deeply in love and willing to overcome all obstacles to be together. They were even planning to run away to be together. However, Kara's sister was worried about her and told their mother about their planned elopement, which ultimately revealed the secret of the young lovers. One early morning, Kara snuck back home, feeling elated after her date with David. But her mother was waiting in her room, clearly aware of her secret. At breakfast, Kara's parents forbade her from seeing David, deeming him unsuitable due to their concerns about violence and drugs. Angry and disappointed, Kara's father grounded her. That night, Kara spent her free time at David's house. At 5:30 a.m., David drove Kara back to her neighborhood and dropped her off near her house. They agreed that once Kara was safely back in her room, she would send him a text message to let him know she was okay. However, the message never came. David tried calling her home phone several times and sent her a few messages on social media, but he didn't hear back from her. An hour later, Kara finally got in touch with him, explaining that she had gotten caught by her parents and asked him to come over so they could talk to him. David arrived on time, but Kara's parents were fiercely opposed. Her dad forbade David from seeing Kara, deeming her too young for a relationship. David's declarations of love fell flat, with her dad threatening to call the police if he saw them together again. The emotional confrontation ended with Kara grounded and David leaving, feeling rejected and heartbroken for the first time. The lovers' separation was agonizing. They devised a plan to deceive everyone by pretending to break up while secretly continuing their affair. In public, they convincingly played the part of former lovers, not even greeting each other. Kara's parents were convinced they'd protected her from a youthful mistake. However, David missed Kara terribly, often reading Shakespeare and imagining openly serenading her like Romeo. David Ludwig took drastic measures by calling Kara's home to request a meeting with her father, Michael. On November 13, 2015, the young man arrived at the Borden residence, determined to discuss their plans to get married. Ludwig confessed his love for Kara and their intentions to Michael, but he received a dismissive response, saying it would never happen. Prepared for this reaction, Ludwig, fueled by anger, pulled out a handgun and shot Michael in the back as he walked towards the front door. Next, he targeted Kara's mother, Catherine, shooting her while she sat in a chair. Ludwig then searched the house for Kara, calling out her name, but she was nowhere to be found. He got into his car, started the engine, and began to drive away. That's when he spotted Kara running down the road towards him. She got into the car, expressing her desire to escape and start a new life with David. They fled the city in David's red car, leaving the chaos behind. Kara Borden was missing for 24 hours after her parents, Michael and Catherine Borden, were found dead. Investigators reviewed surveillance footage, which led them to track the teenagers. The footage also showed that Kara didn't resist and had willingly gone with David Ludwig. As a result, the charges against Ludwig for abducting Kara were dropped. Alerts were issued to police across the East, including in Pennsylvania and Indiana, as the couple was spotted heading west in a red Volkswagen Jetta. On Monday morning, authorities received a tip about a vehicle matching the description parked near a truck stop outside Fort Wayne. Police rushed to the area, but the car was already gone. State police were alerted, and they spotted the car around noon on Interstate 70 in Belleville. David Ludwig got onto the interstate, leading police on a high-speed chase at 90 to 95 miles per hour on a two-lane highway. According to State Trooper David Couch, who was involved in the pursuit, Ludwig drove extremely recklessly and dangerously, causing multiple accidents, much like in an action movie. The district attorney announced that, Despite the initial kidnapping charge being dropped, they would still face charges for the brutal murder of Michael and Catherine Borden. David Ludwig and Kara Beth Borden went on the run following the tragic incident, evading authorities for approximately 28 hours before being apprehended in Indiana. While Kara Beth was not charged with any crime, David Ludwig was detained without bail, facing charges of murder and abduction. In the aftermath, Kara was taken in by relatives and church members for care. David Ludwig was arrested on November 14, 2005, following a high-speed chase that ended with his vehicle crashing into a tree. He was charged with the murder of the Bordens, a crime allegedly committed after a prolonged dispute. Ludwig confessed to 2 counts of intentional harm, stating that he had deliberately intended to shoot the Bordens if they got in his way, and that he did so. During a search of his vehicle after his arrest, no weapons were found. However, when the police searched his home, they discovered an arsenal of 54 firearms, which belonged to his father, a hunter who had taught Ludwig how to handle weapons. The police also found an 18-minute video on a laptop in his home, which showed Ludwig discussing plans to invade another family's home, armed with weapons. The plan was abandoned due to the presence of too many cars. Although the police declared Kara Borden a victim in the case, Ludwig claimed that surveillance footage from various stores along their route would prove that she was not abducted. He did not resist extradition to Pennsylvania, and a judge ordered him held without bail. Ludwig was not represented by an attorney during the charge presentation, and a preliminary hearing was set for November 23rd. The trial of Ludwig, who was responsible for the deaths of 2 adults in front of their children, was brief, as detailed in court documents. Caitlin, Kara's 13-year-old sister, told investigators that her parents were killed after arguing with David Ludwig for about an hour. According to Caitlin, Ludwig shot her father, and she then ran to the bathroom where she heard a second shot, which likely killed her mother. Afterwards, Ludwig ran through the house, calling out to Kara. In June 2006, David Ludwig agreed to a plea deal with District Attorney Donald R. Totoro, who had originally sought the death penalty. As a result, Ludwig pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder, among other charges, and was immediately sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences of 9.5 to 19 years. He was also ordered to pay $125,000 in restitution. Since 2006, Kara Borden has been under guardianship, represented by legal counsel. In November 2005, it was reported that the charge of abduction against David G. Ludwig was dropped. The court concluded that Kara had voluntarily left with Ludwig, as supported by written statements. Ludwig's lawyer claimed that Kara had accompanied David voluntarily during their journey through 3 states, and surveillance footage showed that she had multiple opportunities to escape. Kara herself admitted that she had run after Ludwig as he left her house. Kara Beth Borden was identified as a victim in this tragic situation, and as a result, the Lancaster County District Attorney did not file criminal charges against her. This decision was influenced by her actions during the investigation and the digital evidence collected from emails, blogs, and texts exchanged with Ludwig. A memorial service was held at Lancaster Bible College, where Kara Beth, surrounded by her siblings, mourned the loss of her parents. As a sign of respect and remembrance, the neighborhood adorned their mailboxes with white ribbons. This tragedy left 5 children without the guidance and love of their parents. David Ludwig was transferred to Indiana's State Correctional Institution at Pine Grove to serve his life sentence for murdering his girlfriend's parents. He was chosen for the prison's youthful offender program, designed for inmates 15 to 20, which focuses on teaching self-responsibility, discipline, and respect for others. David Ludwig, now 37, is serving 2 life sentences for fatally shooting Michael and Catherine Borden in 2005 after they barred him from seeing their 14-year-old daughter. He cited the 2012 U.S. Supreme Court ruling against life imprisonment for minors, but the PA Supreme Court denied his petition, agreeing with a lower court that he's not entitled to same consideration since he was 18 at the time. David Ludwig will spend life in prison. The community struggled to understand how well-raised kids committed evil. Despite Christian homeschooling, tragedy struck, leaving questions if parents overlooked or failed to convey values. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shanynthia Gardner. Shanynthia Gardner was born in Memphis, Tennessee, in the late 1980s. Shaninthia's childhood was relatively ordinary. She was a beautiful, slender, curly-haired brunette with a talent for music and a creative spirit. She had a gift for composing songs and singing, which earned her local recognition and fame. Her love for music was just one of her passions. In addition to singing, Shanynthia enjoyed fashion and photography. She was a natural in front of the camera and had an artistic eye for capturing everyday moments. Despite her many creative pursuits, Shanynthia was also devoted to charity and her faith. She regularly attended church and prioritized her family's needs. Her life seemed to be on a promising path, filled with potential and possibilities. Shanynthia was 14 years old when she met Dur Clayton through mutual friends. They quickly discovered common interests and became friends. As they grew older and graduated from high school, their friendship evolved into a romantic relationship. They were perceived as a serious and stable young couple, but had some minor run-ins with the law, including traffic violations and disorderly conduct. In 2008, Dur faced a serious accusation of assaulting a woman, although it was allegedly unintentional. Fortunately for him, the charges were eventually dropped. That same year, Shanynthia and Dur began living together, and they had a son. Shanynthia took on a caring motherly role not only to their son but also to Dur's 2 children from a previous relationship. Sonia Clayton, Dur's mother, considered Shanynthia a part of their family, not just she her son loved. Shaninthia's devotion to her children made her special in Sonia's eyes. Although the relationship between Shanynthia and Dur was short-lived, they maintained some contact after the breakup. In Sonia's opinion, Shanynthia remained a good partner and caring mother to Dur. Shaninthia's marriage to Martin Gardner marked a new chapter in her life. He brought joy and stability, and she won him over with her kindness and love for children. To Martin, Shanynthia embodied feminine tenderness and wisdom. Shanynthia and Martin's life together progressed quickly. In September 2013, they moved into an apartment in southeast Shelby County and started their life together. After their wedding, they welcomed their first child, Telone. The following year, Saya was born, and soon after, 2 more girls, Savi and Yazzie, joined the family. In total, Martin and Shanynthia had 4 children together, in addition to Shaninthia's child from a previous relationship. For the young mom, her children were always the top priority. She enjoyed her part-time work at the Children's Hospital and was also actively involved in a center that raised funds to support children in need. Helping others was her true calling, and she dedicated her life to it with gratitude. Friday, July 1st, 2016, began like any other ordinary day. At around noon, Shanynthia was speaking with her husband, Martin, over the phone. Her voice remained calm, as it typically was. She told her husband she was going to watch a movie with the kids, giving no indication that anything was amiss on this ordinary day. However, during a quiet conversation between the spouses, a sudden and inexplicable madness took hold of Shanynthia. She grabbed a kitchen knife and entered the living room, where she attacked her 6-month-old daughter, Yazzie. The defenseless baby was caught off guard and her life was brutally cut short by the person she trusted most. The eldest child, at just 7 years old, witnessed this horrific scene unfold before his eyes, unable to fully comprehend the tragedy. Panicked and desperate, he fled the house. Shanynthia pursued him, still armed with the knife, intent on continuing her rampage. She chased after Dur, but his terrified screams caught the attention of the neighbors. A couple of neighbors rushed outside after hearing screams and were met with a horrific scene that would haunt them. Shanynthia stopped attacking Durr when she realized she was being watched. However, the horror was far from over. Chania went back inside the house, where her children, Savi and Talon, were waiting. In a state of distress, she went upstairs to the bedroom where the younger children were, marking the end of their innocent lives. The witnesses quickly called emergency services, requesting help for Durr and his siblings. At that moment, no one could have predicted the tragic outcome that awaited the quiet neighborhood. When the sheriff's personnel arrived, they were confronted with a gruesome scene. Inside the house, they found 4 lifeless children, covered in blood. The sight was shocking. Shanynthia calmly called her husband, Martin, and confessed to killing their children. The house was now filled with blood and horror. The investigators had obtained a bloody knife. Chaplains and specialists were called in to provide support to Durr, who had endured unimaginable trauma and required immediate attention. The sheriff's department launched a major operation, cordoning off the apartment complex, including the golf area and country club. Shanynthia was taken into custody without bail, and her trial was swiftly scheduled for July 5th. Despite the heinous nature of her crimes, Shanynthia was still a mother and partner, someone who had once nurtured love, care, and joy. A friend of Shanynthia, Michelle Jaiman, actively defended Shanynthia on social media, countering the unjust accusations and emphasizing a key factor: postpartum depression. The case sparked discussions, with Dr. Joel Rissman, a psychiatrist at the University of Tennessee Medical Center, noting that mothers killing their children is rare and often linked to mental health problems. Dr. Rissman also highlighted the state's insufficient mental health funding, which frequently leaves families without vital support. Dr. Diane Barnes, a specialist in psychology and postpartum health, clarified the distinction between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. She emphasized that these are 2 separate conditions with distinct symptoms. Although the exact nature of Shaninthia's condition required further examination, Dr. Barnes expressed skepticism that a woman experiencing postpartum depression would commit such acts, instead suggesting psychosis as a more plausible explanation. Durr's father did not believe Shanynthia was guilty. Although he was not his son's guardian, he was able to visit him after his relationship with Shanynthia ended, but this stopped in November 2014. He noticed Shanynthia becoming more radical and controlling. His attempts to contact his son were unsuccessful, and he was excluded from his life. Those close to Shanynthia noticed a significant change in her. She began experiencing discomfort, which turned into anxiety, paranoia, and panic attacks. Her behavior became unpredictable, and some suspected postpartum depression. This was a shock, as Shanynthia was seen as strong and dependable. She had always been in control, but now seemed to be struggling. Shaninthia's sudden change in behavior in March 2015 left many people baffled. At first, her friends and family couldn't understand what was happening. One day, she left work early, picked up her children, and drove them down an unfamiliar road, away from their home. Her husband, Martin, thought she was just going for a walk in a park, which was a normal part of her daily routine, so he wasn't immediately concerned. However, as the hours went by, Shanynthia never came home, which worried Martin greatly. He decided to alert the authorities to look out for his wife, who was driving with their 5 children. Shanynthia drove over 74 miles east, from Memphis to Corinth, but it's unclear why she chose that destination, as she didn't know anyone there. She was later found in the emergency room of St. Francis Hospital, but the police didn't explain how she ended up there. Shanynthia had superficial cuts on her neck and one wrist. If she had attempted to harm herself, her children were the only witnesses, but they were too young to understand what was happening. Eventually, the authorities brought Shanynthia home. However, her behavior became even more unusual after that. She told Martin that someone was threatening her and their family, which shocked him, as she provided no details about the supposed threat or who was behind it. There had been no previous incidents of this kind. When Shanynthia was with family and friends, she began complaining about her job and workload, claiming it made her feel terrible. She soon started saying that some coworkers wanted to harm her. Despite these strange claims, Shanynthia showed no signs of being violent or abusive towards her children or others. The investigation into Shanynthia Gardner's case proved to be a challenging process. Craig Morton, her defense attorney, opted not to discuss the case with the media in its initial stages, deeming it premature for such comments. During the court hearing on July 5, 2016, Shanynthia remained silent, appearing via video link. Despite being questioned by Judge Lambert, she refrained from speaking. Following the trial, Shanynthia was transferred to the Mental Health Institute. Her relatives attended the courthouse but chose not to speak with reporters. Meanwhile, Morton's attorney and prosecutor Jennifer Nichols intended to file a motion to preserve evidence, including information obtained from social media. January 2017 saw Shanynthia formally charged with 4 counts: aggravated child abuse, aggravated murder with a deadly weapon, another count of aggravated child abuse, and child neglect. The investigation into the mysterious and gruesome events continued, leaving the community seeking justice and answers to numerous questions. During the hearing, loved ones of Shanynthia testified about the events of that fateful day. Sonia, Martin's mother, was shocked to learn of the tragedy and rushed to the scene to find her grandson, Der. Initially, she thought something supernatural was involved, but as the shock wore off, she considered possible motives. Sonia wondered if their potential divorce and fear of caring for 5 children alone might have driven Shanynthia to commit the horrific act. The trial was significantly delayed due to Shaninthia's multiple psychiatric evaluations. However, in 2021, the non-jury trial finally commenced. The defense centered its strategy around Shaninthia's mental illness, while the prosecution acknowledged her condition but argued that she could distinguish right from wrong and understood the illegality of her actions. In December 2021, Judge James of the Shelby County Criminal Court rejected the defense's argument, and Shanynthia Gardner was found guilty of all charges. 2 months later, Shanynthia, 34, appeared in court for sentencing, accompanied by her husband Martin. Judge James sentenced her to life in prison for each murder count, plus 15 years for each count of child abuse and neglect. Shanynthia can apply for parole only after serving 51 years. Considering the 5 years she spent in prison before sentencing, she will be eligible for parole in approximately 46 years, at the age of 80. After the sentencing, the prosecutor expressed agreement with the decision, citing that it aligned with their goal of achieving justice for Martin and his children. Upon hearing the verdict, Martin felt a sense of relief knowing that Shanynthia would no longer be able to harm any more children. An evening vigil was held at the apartment complex where the family lived, attended by neighbors, family members, and law enforcement officers. The gathering was a tribute to the innocent victims, with attendees holding red and white candles and offering prayers for the departed souls. The Reverend Pastor of the Baptist Church emphasized that the vigil marked the beginning of the community's healing process. He noted that those present were united in their desire to support the surviving baby and his father during this challenging time. Der did not attend the memorial ceremony, with his grandmother Sonia explaining to the media that he was too consumed by anger to participate. The president and CEO of the Children's Hospital where Shanynthia worked extended condolences on behalf of the hospital staff. Martin's colleagues created a social media account to support him with the funeral arrangements for his 4 children. At the ceremony, Martin displayed remarkable strength and dignity in his speech as he shared a few words about his children and family. He concluded by emphasizing that his home was once filled with happiness when his children and Shanynthia were present, and that he would always cherish this memory. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kelly Clayton. Kelly Clayton, also known as Kelly Stage Clayton, resides in Cotton, New York. Kelly Clayton had a promising life ahead of her. In high school, she was an exemplary student, excelling academically and serving as a role model for her peers. Her academic achievements were impressive, and she passed exams with ease. Despite her academic focus, Kelly's appearance was often described as model-like, and she could have pursued a career in modeling if she had chosen to do so. Following high school, Kelly enrolled in a teacher training university to become a chemistry teacher, which brought immense pride to her parents. However, after a few years, Kelly suddenly lost interest in her studies. It is unclear what triggered this change, but she eventually withdrew from the university and informed her parents that she no longer wanted to pursue a teaching career. Kelly felt that she was too young to be confined to a life of grading notebooks and managing classrooms. Instead, she expressed a desire to travel and experience life to the fullest. Her parents were disappointed and upset by her decision, leading to a 6-month estrangement from their daughter. Kelly's life took an unexpected turn when she met Tom Clayton at a party hosted by mutual friends. Tom was immediately smitten with Kelly and began showering her with attention. His athletic physique and attractive appearance made him a standout, which wasn't surprising given his successful hockey career. As a semi-professional player for the Jackal team, Tom was known for his strength and aggression on the ice. However, he realized his hockey career would eventually end due to physical limitations. Tom would have to retire and enjoy the game from the sidelines, either by attending live matches or watching his favorite team on television. They continued with their lives, starting by returning to New York to get married. They then moved to North Carolina and eventually settled in the small town of Cato, which had only a few thousand residents. Tom started a franchise that specialized in rebuilding houses damaged by fires or disasters. He also worked for a friend's company in a related field. Kelly, on the other hand, had dropped out of university and was working as a waitress. Although she changed jobs, she continued to work even after having 2 children. Tom's income was sufficient for the family, and Kelly could have quit her job to care for their daughters, but she chose to continue working to earn extra money. She used this extra income to buy toys and pamper her children. On September 28, 2015, Tom went to play poker with his friends, the Millers, as he usually did. He preferred to attend these gatherings alone, as playing for money required a certain level of skill and experience. Additionally, someone had to stay home with the children, and bringing the whole family would have turned the evening into a noisy and chaotic affair, detracting from the enjoyment of the game. That evening, Tom was on a losing streak, but instead of giving up, he tried to win back his losses. He suggested that anyone who wanted to stay and play until morning was welcome to do so, but no one took him up on the offer, and he ended up going home. At home, a horrific scene unfolded before Tom's eyes. His wife lay in a pool of her own blood, severely beaten and, at first glance, appeared lifeless. Panicked, Tom frantically searched the rooms for his children. Fortunately, they were unharmed but terrified. He quickly scooped up his daughters and rushed to his neighbor Derek's house, desperate to shield them from the gruesome sight of their mother's battered body. From Derek's house, Tom called the police, struggling to process the chaos. The officer who arrived at the scene found Tom kneeling beside his wife's body, attempting to administer CPR. However, the emergency medical technicians soon intervened and pulled Tom away, revealing the devastating truth: Kelly had been deceased for an extended period, and nothing could be done to revive her. The house was in disarray, with blood covering both floors. The bedroom showed signs of an intense struggle between Kelly and her killer, who carried out the brutal act despite the presence of children in the house. It appeared Kelly had been pushed down the stairs, as evidenced by the broken banister, and brutally beaten with a blunt object until the killer was certain she was dead. No signs of knife or gunshot wounds were found. The officer filming the crime scene observed that Tom seemed lost and in shock. He wandered aimlessly, briefly entering the room before exiting, and was unable to provide the officer with basic information, such as the location of the children's room or the emergency exit. However, when asked about his whereabouts during the murder, Tom calmly stated he had spent the evening at a friend's house playing poker. The officer, failing to obtain clear information from Tom, proceeded to question the neighbor and the children. Tom's eldest daughter, Charlie, described the perpetrator as a robber. According to Charlie, she and her sister were drifting off to sleep when they heard their mother scream loudly from the next room. Their mother yelled, "Charlie, run away from here," and then the whole house shook violently. They cautiously left their room and saw the perpetrator leaning over their mother, beating her with what looked like a hammer. They ran back into the nursery, blocked the door with a small nightstand, and hid under the bed. Fortunately, the perpetrator wasn't looking for them, as the nightstand wouldn't have been enough to stop him. When asked to describe the perpetrator, Charlie said he was big, like a bear. He wore blue jeans, a black shirt, and a mask similar to the one her father wears when hunting. Charlie also noted that the perpetrator's eyes looked like her father's, but she didn't remember anything else, as she only caught a brief glimpse before getting scared and running away. Police officers investigating the house couldn't find evidence to support her claim that the perpetrator was a burglar. There were no signs of forced entry at the front or back doors, but the garage gate was open, which could have been an entry point. However, nothing was stolen from the house, including jewelry and cash, and the cabinets were all closed. This was unusual, as burglars typically search every area. Officers quickly suspected that Tom, was involved in the murder. They believed he was pretending to be a grieving husband and had actually killed his wife to collect insurance payments. If Kelly's life was insured, Tom could potentially receive up to $1 million. The police just needed to gather evidence to solve the case, especially since the daughter mentioned that the perpetrator's mask and eyes resembled her father's. However, the police couldn't find the hunting mask in the house. After discovering Tom's whereabouts on the night in question, the police interviewed the other poker players. One of Tom's friends was incredulous. "You think Tom is the killer? That's unbelievable. His wife was just murdered, and instead of finding the real culprit, you're focusing on him." Another friend, less emotional, chimed in, "Tom couldn't have done it. He worked 2 jobs non-stop because he loved Kelly and their kids. It's just not possible. Besides, he was with us the entire night, playing poker. Even when everyone else was tired, he wanted to keep playing." Laura, an acquaintance of Tom's, shared her concerns during a break in the game. She recalled that Tom had asked to borrow her phone, claiming he had left his in the car, which was only 10 meters away. Laura found this odd but lent him her phone anyway. Tom stepped outside to make the call, but when Laura checked her phone's call history later, there was no record of the call, suggesting that Tom had deleted it. Laura discussed this incident with her husband, who had been sitting next to Tom at the poker table. He noticed that Tom wasn't paying attention to the game, instead keeping his head down, focusing on something on the table. It turned out that Tom had his phone with him the whole time, which raised more questions. Why did Tom borrow Laura's phone if he had his own? Who was he trying to call, and why couldn't he use his own phone? After Laura's testimony, the police re-questioned Charlie, Tom's daughter, and she reiterated that the robber resembled her father. The next testimony came from the niece of Kelly. She explained that she hadn't told her Aunt Kelly about Tom's true nature because she didn't want to upset Kelly. Aunt Kelly adored Tom. The niece felt her truth wasn't needed, implying that it wouldn't change anything. The niece saw Tom as a person with 2 sides. On the surface, he appeared caring and attentive, often showering Aunt Kelly with attention and gifts, and even helping with childcare, which is more than many fathers do. However, his behavior at work revealed a completely different personality. Recognizing her niece's concerns about being young and alone, Aunt Kelly had set up a job for her with Tom the previous summer. During her employment, the niece handled tasks such as correspondence, registration, and managing documents. At first, her interactions with Tom were strictly professional, mainly because she didn't know him well before working for him. One day, Tom got drunk and came to the office, revealing to the niece that his family life was a facade. He confessed to loving his daughters, but not his wife, Aunt Kelly. He had been unfaithful, having multiple affairs during their marriage, and considered leaving her but stayed due to financial concerns. It was later also confirmed by female participants of a poker game that Tom was indeed unfaithful, having relationships with 2 women present at the game. Additionally, Kelly's 16-year-old niece shared information about Michael Beard, another employee of Tom's firm. Michael was doing repair work on houses after a fire, but there were frequent reports of items going missing from the houses where he worked. Tom initially doubted his customers when they accused Michael Beard of theft during fire restoration jobs. However, as the complaints continued, it became clear that Michael was indeed stealing from clients. Additionally, there were allegations of Michael showing up to work intoxicated. When Tom finally confronted Michael about his behavior, he was understandably upset and disappointed. Despite having every right to be angry, Tom took a surprisingly compassionate approach. Instead of simply firing Michael and cutting ties, Tom actively reached out to other companies and recommended Michael for a job. When none of those opportunities panned out, Tom took it a step further and offered Michael work around his own house, doing odd jobs like cutting the grass, watering plants, and making minor repairs. This decision showed that Tom was willing to give Michael a second chance, even if it meant finding alternative employment for his former employee. The detective brought Michael Beard in for questioning. Michael claimed he only stole because he and his family were in dire need of money. He expressed his gratitude towards Tom, his former employer, who had always defended him. Michael also praised Tom's wife, who had shown kindness by feeding him and giving his children old clothes. However, the investigation took a turn when Michael's wife, Holly, was interrogated. She revealed that Tom had offered Michael a job, which Michael had not mentioned earlier, and promised to pay him $10,000 for it. This new information raised suspicions about Michael's alibi. He was called back to the station and hooked up to a lie detector. The test results indicated that Michael was lying, and he eventually cracked under pressure and began to confess. The investigation was sparked by the death of Kelly, which had shaken Michael. He had even attended church to pray for her soul, showing that he was genuinely distraught by her passing. Despite initial doubts about his involvement, the police had released him after the first round of questioning. However, Holly's testimony changed everything. Tom promised Michael $10,000 to kill his wife, Kelly, and make it look like an accident. The plan was for Michael to sneak into the house while Tom was playing poker, strangle Kelly, and then start a fire to cover up the crime. The house was insured for a large sum of money. Michael found 2 cans of gasoline waiting for him in the garage, which he would use to set the fire. He quietly entered the house while everyone was asleep. He crept upstairs to Kelly's bedroom, but she was either awake or woken by the sound of the door. She saw Michael and began screaming. Kelly's screaming startled Michael, and he tried to strangle her. However, Kelly was stronger than she appeared and fought back. A fierce struggle ensued, moving from the bedroom to the kitchen. Michael was surprised by Kelly's strength, which made the fight much more intense than he had anticipated. Michael was in a state of shock and panic, flailing his arms wildly and grabbing at Kelly's clothes, unable to focus on the fight. In contrast, Kelly was fighting for her life, accurately aiming her blows at Michael's face. If the police had arrived at Michael's location sooner, they would have seen evidence of the beating he had taken. After a prolonged struggle, Michael slammed Kelly's head into the wall with great force, knocking her to the ground. She was unable to get up for some time. Michael then produced a hammer and continued to strike Kelly's head until she showed no signs of life. Consumed by rage and panic, Michael fled the house, forgetting that Tom had instructed him not only to kill Kelly but also to set fire to the house to conceal the crime. Mark Blandford, Michael's accomplice, was just the driver. Knowing Michael from working together and staying with him, Mark had not been surprised when Michael, known for petty theft, had asked him to drive during a break-in. Mark had mentioned that he had initially wanted to decline Michael's request, but that the offer of $500 had been tempting. After some deliberation, Michael had convinced him to participate. Michael's plan had been to rob a businessman, and he had needed Mark's assistance to make a quick getaway before the police arrived. Michael had also promised to help with the car. Mark had eventually agreed, but only on the condition that he could park the car at a safe distance from the house. Michael had accepted this condition. That evening, Mark had waited for Michael in the car in a dark alley, and Michael had come back quickly enough, breathing heavily and telling him to move as fast as possible. Michael hadn't had any bag or sack on him, which hadn't looked much like a robbery. Mark hadn't asked him any questions along the way, simply because he hadn't wanted to know anything. He had just wanted his $500, which he hadn't ended up getting. On the way out, Michael had asked Mark to stop at a bridge over a creek a couple blocks south of there. Mark had stopped there, and Michael had hastily stripped off his outer garments and thrown them off the bridge. Mark had offered to show the place if needed. Indeed, police officers who had arrived on the scene at Mark's behest had found parts of Michael's outer clothing near the creek, as well as the hammer used to kill Kelly. Michael, already in custody on suspicion of first-degree murder, began to change his testimony. According to him, he was indeed hired by Tom, indeed for $10,000, but only to commit arson at the house and nothing more. Michael spent a very long time assuring the police of his innocence, and all because he did not know that Mark had shown the place where Michael had thrown out his things, and that his clothes, as well as the murder weapon, had already been submitted for examination. And the experts found both on his clothes and on the hammer the blood of Kelly Clayton. And that was the most direct proof that it was him who killed Kelly, not someone else. Tom denied ordering the massacre of his wife, claiming Michael acted alone. According to Tom, Michael knew Tom had money and was motivated by resentment over losing his job. Tom suggested Michael robbed his house, unaware Kelly was home, resulting in her death. However, Laura, a woman who played poker with Tom, revealed that Tom used her cell phone to make a call. The detective obtained the call records, confirming suspicions. The records showed Tom called Michael on the night of September 28th to 29th. Michael was tried first and maintained he was hired to set fire to the house for insurance purposes. He claimed he didn't kill Kelly and the blood on his clothes came from touching her dead body. He had disposed of his belongings to avoid suspicion of being at the Claytons' house that night. His testimony seemed convincing. The jury deliberated for 7 hours before delivering a guilty verdict on all counts against Michael Beard, who now faced life imprisonment. In contrast, Tom's lawyers managed to gather records of conversations and correspondence between Tom and Michael, but none of these clearly mentioned their nefarious plan. Furthermore, the prosecution's attempts to obtain billing transcripts of Tom's movements yielded no concrete evidence. All the evidence against Tom was circumstantial. However, one key detail caught the attention of investigators. The car in which Mark had given Michael a ride was registered to Tom's company. Moreover, on the day of the incident, Tom had arrived at the office in his personal Toyota but then switched to the company's pickup truck, which was later driven to Michael's house and left there. The truck was returned to the office the day after the tragedy. This suggested that Tom had, in fact, provided Michael with the car that he and Mark used to commit the crime. It was a crucial piece of evidence that the jury testified to during the trial. The 6-day trial concluded with the jury finding Tom guilty of hiring Michael to commit the heinous crime. Michael subsequently appealed, using the testimony of young Charlie, who claimed that the eyes behind the mask belonged to her father. However, the court dismissed the appeal due to the matching description of the clothing found under the bridge. Consequently, Tom Clayton and Michael Beard were sentenced to life in prison. Mark received a 4-year prison sentence for manslaughter. The custody of Tom and Kelly's children was awarded to Kelly's sister, Kim. With time, Charlie has learned to cope with the tragedy. Although she occasionally remembers her mother, she refuses to discuss her father, whom she will never want to see again. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Williams. Michelle was raised in Hurst, a suburb of Dallas, Texas, alongside her younger sister Laura. After their mother left to pursue a better life, their father took on the responsibility of raising them. However, he struggled to provide for the family, often relying on unstable construction work and seeking solace in alcohol. In an attempt to make ends meet, Michelle's father devised and carried out schemes to obtain easy money. He would take jobs at factories, intentionally injure himself, and collect insurance payouts. Although this tactic initially worked, it was eventually exposed with the help of CCTV cameras at one of his workplaces, resulting in his arrest and imprisonment. Growing up in an environment filled with deception and manipulation, Michelle became accustomed to a life of dishonesty. She desperately sought escape from this reality, but the lies and deceit had become ingrained in her way of life, making it difficult for her to imagine an alternative. Michelle longed to grow up quickly and leave her impoverished life behind. By the age of 15, she had developed into an attractive young woman, drawing attention from both her peers and older individuals. Michelle soon discovers that she can use her femininity and charm to influence the men around her and get what she wants. As a result, she enters a series of romantic relationships with various men. At 17, Michelle drops out of school and marries 16-year-old Kenneth O'Brien, telling him she's pregnant. Kenneth takes responsibility for his young wife and unborn child, joining the army to provide for them. They move frequently, having 2 more children, but Michelle grows dissatisfied with their nomadic lifestyle and temporary military housing. After 5 years, Michelle leaves Kenneth, citing his infidelity and physical abuse as reasons for the divorce. She returns to her hometown of Hurst, portraying herself as a victim of domestic violence to garner support from relatives and friends. As Michelle rebuilds her life, she reconnects with an old classmate, Brandon, and falls in love. Brandon is smitten with Michelle and happily accepts her 3 children from her previous marriage. They were preparing to get married, but just before the wedding, Brandon became furious with Michelle. He discovered that she had not finalized her divorce from her first husband. Michelle had been afraid to discuss the divorce with her ex-husband due to his abusive behavior, and as a result, she hadn't sent the necessary documents. With the help of a lawyer, they quickly resolved the issue, and they was able to get married in 1994. Initially, their family life was peaceful and routine. Brandon focused on growing his IT company, while Michelle worked as a dental assistant. However, Michelle had bigger aspirations. She began bringing home various dental equipment and supplies. Brandon's concerns grew as he suspected something was wrong. It was later revealed that Michelle had been stealing. Fortunately, they avoided going to trial. However, this incident marked the beginning of Brandon's trust issues with his wife. When neighbors reported that cars frequently visited their house while Brandon was at work, he installed a tape recorder in several rooms. Upon listening to the recordings, he discovered that various men were visiting their home throughout the day. Brandon conducted his own investigation and discovered that Michelle's first marriage ended in divorce due to her repeated infidelities, contradicting her claim that it was her husband's abuse. Upon learning this, Brandon reached his limit and requested a divorce. Enraged that Brandon was the one to initiate the split, Michelle sought revenge while he was away at work. Brandon had a valuable saltwater aquarium with thousands of dollars worth of fish. Michelle destroyed it by pouring Comet into the tank, killing all the fish. But that was not the end of her destructive behavior. Brandon's dog, Domino, was also a victim of Michelle's cruelty. She gave the dog sleeping pills, which led to its death. However, this was only the beginning of Brandon's nightmare. Michelle's actions continued to cause harm, and Brandon eventually learned the truth about her when his marriage was ruined. What Michelle did to Brandon was not an isolated incident. Her treatment of other men was even more shocking. It was later discovered that Michelle's first child was the child of her and John Paul Ray, a high school classmate of hers. Instead of telling John the truth, Michelle convinces Kenneth O'Brien that the child is his and he is forced to marry her. For 13 years, Kenneth believed the child was his child and even paid child support from age 5 to 18. After Michelle's divorce from Brandon, she moved in with John, the father of her first child. They lived together in a common-law marriage for 8 years. However, their relationship ended abruptly when John suspected Michelle of cheating on him. Michelle confirmed she was having an affair, which led to John moving out and leaving most of her belongings behind. She then met Greg Williams, a man with a history of marital failures, having been married twice before and having a daughter named Taylor from his previous marriage to Katie. After Greg and Katie's divorce in 2003, they shared custody of Taylor and maintained a good relationship, which made a formal child support agreement unnecessary. Greg was a successful and generous man who seemed like a perfect partner for Michelle. In 2007, Greg and Michelle had a daughter named Michaela, and they got married a year later. Their marriage seemed like the epitome of the American dream, with plenty of money, children, and love. Michelle appeared to have finally achieved the life she had always wanted. Greg came from a family with strong principles and had achieved success through his own hard work from a young age. He was a sports enthusiast and a black belt in martial arts. Both Greg and Michelle owned guns, which they kept in their home in Keller. Michelle kept a silver .40 caliber pistol in a safe, while Greg stored his black LAA .45 caliber gun, always loaded, in a case under his bedside table. Despite their differences, they was committed to making their marriage work. They regularly hosted birthday parties for their children from previous relationships at their home in Keller. Michelle's adult children frequently hosted barbecues and pool parties at their home, which was always filled with friends. Despite their idyllic suburban life and bright daughter, Michelle and her husband Greg didn't fit the traditional American couple mold. They had met through an online forum for those interested in bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism, and their raucous adult gatherings had drawn numerous complaints from their neighbors. On October 13, 2011, at 4:40 a.m., an emergency call was made by a frantic woman, claiming she and her husband had been attacked by an intruder. She reported being injured and her husband shot. Police quickly arrived at the scene, discovered a blaring television and a baby sleeping on the couch inside the house. Michelle's daughter was fast asleep and unharmed during the incident. However, Michelle's behavior raised suspicions among the police officers who arrived at the scene. Despite claiming to have just experienced a burglary and assault, Michelle appeared remarkably calm and composed. Her hair was styled, and she was fully dressed, which seemed inconsistent with her story. The police soon cordoned off the entire gated community and thoroughly searched the home. As the investigation progressed, Michelle was taken to the Keller Township Police Station for further questioning. Over several hours of interrogation, her account of the events began to unravel. Michelle initially claimed that an intruder, dressed in black, had struck her on the head with a wrench. She alleged that she fell to the ground but remained conscious and heard a gunshot. According to her, The intruder then fled through the back door. However, the evidence at the scene contradicted her story. Kraig Williams, the victim, was found shot in the head while lying in bed. A .45 caliber handgun and a wrench were discovered near the back door, but the circumstances suggested that Michelle's account was not entirely credible. The investigation found no fingerprints on the weapons and no signs of forced entry. The family's valuables, including a large sum of cash, were left untouched. Security footage revealed that the only car to enter the gated community before the crime belonged to a newspaper delivery person. Michelle attempted to mislead the police by fabricating a story about the attack. She even went so far as to injure herself with a wrench and stage the scene. However, detectives noticed inconsistencies in her account. The discovery of the gun used in the crime, devoid of fingerprints, further raised suspicions. The final discrepancy was the untouched $20,000 in cash, which Michelle couldn't explain. While Michelle was unable to provide a reason for why her husband, a successful businessman and devoted father, would take his own life, she was able to justify her own actions. Michelle claimed she wanted to protect their young daughter from the painful truth about her father's death. She told the police that she had cleaned the gun and washed her husband Kraig's hands to remove fingerprints, and then staged a fake home invasion before calling for help. This explanation seemed strange, but it explained why no evidence of an intruder was found. Michelle also admitted to using bleach to clean up the crime scene and hitting herself in the face with a wrench to make the attack look more believable. From the start, the police in Keller suspected that Michelle's story was not true, but at the time, they did not have any physical evidence that linked her to the crime. Michelle was arrested for lying to the police, but she was later released. Around 5 p.m. on the day of her husband's murder, Michelle visited her sister Laura's home. During the evening, Michelle cried occasionally, but her sister felt that Michelle's tears seemed insincere. Notably, Michelle didn't mention her late husband's name once. The next morning, when questioned by police, Michelle appeared to be in a great mood. She was well-dressed, had styled her hair, and was wearing makeup. Despite the ongoing investigation into her husband's death, Michelle went out for breakfast at a popular restaurant. As investigators struggled to find a motive and credible evidence, Michelle inadvertently provided them with both. During her initial interrogation, Michelle claimed she wasn't interested in money. However, her actions after Kraig's death told a different story. She quickly began selling off assets from their family businesses and spending large sums of money. Michelle had been cashing checks through her husband Kraig's IT company, but the exact amount is unknown. It is likely that the amount was substantial. After selling the Blueberries frozen yogurt store in Keller, Michelle made a crucial mistake. She attempted to claim the payout on Kraig's life insurance policy, for which she was the sole beneficiary. The policy was taken out on August 12, 2011, nearly 2 months before Kraig's death. However, Michelle overlooked a key detail: the policy did not cover Kraig's death since he had taken his own life. As a result, the insurance company denied her the $60,000 payout, which was the primary motive for the crime. Later, another financial irregularity came to light that raised suspicions about Michelle. It was discovered that she had used falsified financial documents to secure a mortgage loan for the house that she and Kraig were planning to buy before his death. The account numbers had been intentionally altered, and the lender did not immediately detect the elaborate scheme. Following Kraig's death, Michelle canceled a meeting with the mortgage company, and the fake account went undiscussed until it caught the attention of the police. Despite the scrutiny, Michelle felt confident in her ability to avoid consequences and wrote a check for $188,000 to attorney Kenneth Wincorn. She then took a week-long vacation to Grapevine with her children. During a 3-month investigation into Kraig Williams' death, police uncovered a web of deceit spun by his wife, Michelle. An autopsy revealed that Kraig was shot from a distance of 12 to 18 inches. A toxicology report also showed that Kraig had a large amount of sleeping pills in his system at the time of his death. Further investigation found no evidence of a break-in or assault on the house. Instead, police determined that Michelle had sedated her husband, turned up the TV volume, and shot him from close range. Their daughter was asleep in her room and did not hear the shooting. On November 3, 2011, the Tarrant County Medical Examiner officially ruled Kraig's death a homicide. Michelle Williams was arrested on January 9 while on her way to a fitness center. She was charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and providing a false statement to police. As the sole witness and suspect, Michelle's bail was set at $522,000. However, she spent only a week in custody before being released on a reduced bail of $85,000. Michelle walked out of jail wearing gym clothes and a GPS monitor, accompanied by her new attorney, Kenneth Wincorn. However, this news infuriated Kathy, Kraig's first wife, as she had paid Wincorn with money from Kraig's estate, which she believed should not be used to defend Michelle, who was accused of killing Kraig. According to online court records, Kenneth Wincorn's law firm had handled Kraig and his ex-wife Kathy's divorce in 2003, and his name appeared on documents related to the custody agreement for their daughter Taylor in 2008. However, Wincorn later provided evidence showing his company, rather than him personally, had handled Kraig's divorce case, which cleared him of the accusations that he had colluded with Michelle. Kenneth Wincorn learned of Kraig's murder from an IT company employee. He described the news as shocking. Later, Michelle sought his help after her attempt to profit from Kraig's death failed. Michelle changed her name to Shelley and presented herself as a fitness guru on Facebook. She publicly revealed her relationship with Gene Wallace, a friend of her oldest son who is nearly 15 years younger than her. Shelley and Gene opened a fitness club in Bedford and actively promoted it online. Michelle spent the next few months attending court hearings, enjoying her new relationship, and participating in fitness classes while wearing a GPS tracking ankle bracelet. Her courtroom attire often included miniskirts, knee-length boots, and revealing blouses. According to Kraig's ex-wife Kathy, Michelle never showed any signs of mourning Kraig's death. Rob Conover, a friend of Kraig's for over 20 years, attended many of Michelle's hearings. He observed how Michelle skillfully manipulated police officers, portraying herself as an innocent woman in need of protection. On October 9, 2013, 45-year-old Michelle took a plea deal, pleading guilty to tampering with evidence and deadly conduct. Michelle Williams has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for tampering with evidence and engaging in deadly, dangerous conduct. This is a third-degree felony that is only recognized in a few states. Initially, Michelle admitted to cleaning the gun and her husband Kraig's body, but the lack of her DNA at the scene raised doubts about the first-degree murder charge. The trial of Michelle Williams, also known as Keller's Black Widow, has begun. Prosecutors allege that she intentionally targeted her husband in 2011 to collect on his substantial life insurance policy. They described the crime as a clearly planned scheme motivated by greed. According to prosecutors, Michelle drugged her husband with sleeping pills and then shot him in the head to collect the insurance payout. Michelle admitted to cleaning the gun and Kraig's body, but the lack of her DNA at the scene raised doubts about the first-degree murder charge. In a statement, Michelle's attorney, Kenneth Wincorn, highlighted the challenges in the case due to the thoroughly cleaned crime scene. If the jury finds that Michelle tampered with evidence and cleaned up the crime scene, she could receive a life sentence. During the trial, prosecutors stated that in the hours preceding the violent death, Kraig Williams had a heated argument with his wife over financial issues. The altercation escalated to the point where he slapped her for spending a significant amount of money intended for a house down payment. In contrast, Michelle Williams' defense team claimed that Kraig Williams took his own life. Defense attorney Clay Graham added that Greg Williams frequently struggled with depression and was known to use sedatives and steroids regularly. Michelle Williams' husband, Greg, was found dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Michelle stated that she attempted to cover up the incident to shield her 4-year-old daughter from the truth. Throughout the court hearings, Michelle maintained a composed appearance but showed some emotional response when presented with photographs of her deceased husband. Michelle planned to blame Greg's ex-wife for the crime, claiming it was due to custody disputes. However, this plan was flawed as there were no actual disputes. Michelle's adult son testified against her, revealing she had asked him to assist in framing Greg's ex-wife. After many hours of deliberation, the jury found Michelle guilty of tampering with physical evidence, a felony offense. She received a harsh sentence, 60 years in prison, with the stipulation that she must serve at least 30 years before becoming eligible for parole. Michelle has not expressed remorse for her actions and continues to evade full responsibility for her crimes. She is currently serving her time at Mountain View Prison in Gatesville, Texas. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Behnaz Mohamed. Behnaz Mohamed was born on December 16, 1985 in Iraq. She comes from an Iraqi Kurdish family with strong religious traditions. Her parents, Mohamed Babakar Mohamed and his wife, had 6 children, 1 son, Bahman, and 5 daughters, Baza, Beel, Han, Jaban, and Behnaz. They lived in a rural tribal area in Iraqi Kurdistan, adhering to traditional values, especially regarding women's roles. In 1995, when Behnaz was 10 years old, her family moved to the UK. However, this change in location did not alter their deeply held religious and traditional views. Despite being in a more liberal European country, the family continued to reject modern opinion and lived within their tight-knit religious community. At 17, Behnaz was forced into a marriage with a man 10 years her senior, who had recently arrived from Iraq. He did not speak English and lacked basic literacy skills. Behnaz having met her future husband only 3 times before the wedding. Behnaz, described as a girl with brown eyes, long dark hair, and a kind smile, followed tradition and moved into her new husband's home, despite him being a stranger to her. From the start, Behnaz suffered physical and emotional abuse at the hands of her husband. Despite having lived in the UK and being aware of her rights, she was trapped in a cycle of violence. She tried to leave her husband multiple times, but her family forced her to return, as it was considered a disgrace for the entire Mohamed family. With no support from her relatives, Behnaz turned to the police twice, but they failed to take action, leaving her vulnerable to further abuse. In July 2005, after 2 years of marriage, Behnaz finally escaped her husband's house and returned to her parents' home. After leaving her husband, Behnaz felt a sense of freedom. She met Ramith Soleimani, and they fell deeply in love. However, they had to keep their relationship a secret. They would only communicate twice a day, exchanging messages in the morning and evening. Ramith was unlike the men surrounding Behnaz, as he was calm, wise, and courteous. He treated she with great respect and kindness, instantly winning her heart. Before long, they began envisioning a future together, discussing wedding plans and a happy family life. They even chose names for their potential children. These joyful dreams brought Behnaz happiness and gave her the strength to cope with the hatred and aggression from her family. In early October 2005, Behnaz was walking down the street when she noticed a car following her. She recognized the people inside as Kurdish migrants sent by her father. Knowing her family's history, Behnaz became terrified for her safety. On October 10, 2005, Behnaz visited the police station again. During a 2-hour conversation, she shared detailed information about her life with her husband, including the physical abuse she suffered, her family's resentment, and the recent surveillance. She told the police that her husband had repeatedly beaten her, and during one incident, He nearly knocked out her tooth because she dared to call him by his first name in public. Banaz had previously informed the police that she feared for her life, but her concerns were ignored. The police failed to investigate her claims, neglecting to interview her family and husband to verify the accuracy of the information. She was told to contact them again if she felt threatened. Banaz and her boyfriend, Rameth, secretly met for about 2 months without being detected. However, in early December 2005, they were spotted by members of her family near a London subway station. This information was immediately reported to her father. That evening, her male relatives gathered at the family home, where they discussed her actions and deemed them unacceptable. Her uncle, Ari Mahmoud, declared that Banaz should be killed to restore the family's honor. Banaz overheard this conversation. Following this, Banaz went to the police again and explained that she had been under surveillance for months. She also told them that her family intended to kill her. She provided a list of 5 family members who were involved in the plot, but the police did not take her seriously. A serious mistake was made, which led to Banaz's disappearance. To uncover her fate, investigators must untangle a complicated network of lies, violence, and disregard for the truth. 2 weeks later, Banaz's father deceives her into visiting a relative's house, promising to discuss her divorce. Upon arrival, he forces her to drink brandy and leaves her alone in a room with the TV on. As she turns around, she sees her father putting on rubber gloves and reaching for a rope. Realizing her life is in danger, Banaz rushes to the front door, but it's locked. To escape, she breaks a window, cutting her hands on the shards. Banaz manages to reach a nearby cafe, where she collapses. Paramedics arrive and take her to the hospital, where the police are called. When Banaz regains consciousness, she contacts Rameth and asks him to come. After being discharged from the hospital, Banaz moves in with Rameth Soleimani. They celebrate the start of 2006 together and are happy. However, by mid-January, the Mahmoud family begins to pressure Banaz to return home, supposedly to mend their relationship and discuss her marriage to Rameth. Banaz trusted her parents and agreed to return to her father's house, believing her mother would protect her if her father became violent. To be safe, Banaz went to the police station again and gave a full statement, including the names of people she thought might harm her. Despite her fears, she returned to her family home. On January 22, 2006, Rameth was attacked by 3 men in the street who tried to force him into a car. He managed to fight back and reported the incident to the police. 2 days later, Rameth and Banaz were due to give a statement at the police station, but Banaz failed to appear. Rameth attempted to reach Banaz Mahmoud, but lost contact with her after she vanished upon returning to her family's residence. Rameth, who had been in constant touch with Banaz, grew increasingly worried and filed a missing persons report with the police. After numerous appeals, the police finally took action. The disappearance of Banaz Mahmoud sparked an investigation led by the Homicide and Serious Crime Directorate, with Chief Inspector Caroline Good at the helm. Initially, it was suspected that Banaz was being held captive in a house within the community. To locate her, Inspector Good organized an extensive search of linked to the Mahmoud family. Banaz's father, uncle, and ex-husband were brought in for questioning as suspects. The police also began searching for 3 other men listed by Banaz in December 2005, Omar Hussein, Muhammad Ali, and Mohammed Hama, all of whom were her cousins. However, when the police searched the neighborhood and tried to question her family members, and the family refused to cooperate with the investigation into her disappearance. Police found no photos of Banaz at her family's home, and her family's complete lack of concern shocked officers. Caroline Good then focused on 30 individuals, all of whom were arrested and questioned. During the investigation, over 20 vehicles and 300 cell phones were seized from those involved. Every person questioned attempted to hinder the investigation, providing conflicting accounts of Banaz's whereabouts. Some claimed to have seen her after she went missing, while others, including her mother, refused to cooperate with the police. Some even suggested she was in hiding. Realizing that no one would cooperate voluntarily, Caroline Good obtained permission to bug the cells of those arrested. At that point, Banaz's father, her uncle, and Mohammed Hama remained in police custody. 2 other men under investigation had managed to escape to Iraq. The detectives were horrified when they received the initial wiretap results. Not only did the 3 arrested men show no remorse, but they also took pleasure in recounting the details of Banaz's death. Their conversations revealed that on January 23, the Mahmoud family intentionally left their home, allowing Omar Hussein and Hama to enter. Once inside, they attacked Banaz, subjecting her to a 2-hour ordeal of beatings and violence. As the torture came to an end, Hama wrapped a cord around Banaz's neck and strangled her. When recalling the final moments of Banaz's life, Hama couldn't contain his laughter. However, it was Mohammed Hama's admission of being present when Rameth was threatened that became the turning point in the case. While Hama was being held in a cell awaiting trial, his phone conversations were secretly recorded. Caroline Good listened to these recordings with growing horror as the suspect proudly described the gruesome details of the murder. In the recordings, Hama provided a detailed account of what they did to Banaz. Despite being terrified and vomiting, Banaz remained silent. Hama then wrapped the rope around her neck 3 times, pulling it so tight that it dug into her skin. As he continued to speak with excitement, he placed his feet on her back and pulled and tugged on the rope. Banaz clung to life until her last breath. It took the perpetrators over 30 minutes to kill Banaz. The brutality of the crime was too much for Caroline Good and the detectives, and they couldn't hold back their tears. Banaz's cousin, Dana Amin, 30, was present in the house and helped the perpetrator put Banaz's body in a suitcase. Muhammad Ali then dragged the suitcase out of the house to a waiting car nearby. Hama revealed that a police car drove by, but the officers didn't notice the suitcase, which had hair and an elbow protruding from it. The very people meant to protect Banaz were involved in plotting her murder. They strangled her with a shoelace, stuffed her body into a suitcase, and took it outside of London. Snippets of conversation mentioned a derelict house with a garden in Birmingham. Caroline Good used the information gathered and matched it with the movement data from the arrested suspects' phones to identify the search area. Due to the vastness of the area, the search could have taken a long time. During a conversation with the suspects, one of them suddenly turned to the other and asked if they had put the freezer back where it originally was. This sparked an idea for Caroline Good, now knew what to look for. A police helicopter was deployed to scan the area and spotted a house with a backyard filled with trash, including a white oblong object resembling a freezer that stood out among the black garbage bags. Upon closer inspection of the suspicious house, the officers' suspicions were confirmed. The police officers began digging, but as the hole reached shoulder depth, they were on the verge of giving up, all except Caroline Good. She recalled the words of Mohammed Hama, who had boasted to relatives that he had buried the victim so deep that she would only be found with the help of an informant. Caroline Good convinced the team to extend the search for another day. On the evening of April 28, 2006, their persistence paid off, and the suitcase was finally found. Unfortunately, Banaz's remains were in extremely poor condition, making it necessary to rely on dental records and DNA samples for identification. Her body was discovered folded into a fetal position, hidden in a suitcase and buried beneath a freezer in the garden of a Birmingham house. On May 1, 2006, the suspects were formally charged with the crime. However, they displayed no remorse, convinced that their actions were justified. Mohammed Hama even claimed that the case would not go to trial, as he believed he was simply carrying out an act of retaliation. Meanwhile, Caroline Good faced renewed opposition from the Kurdish diaspora community. Following the discovery of Banaz's remains, numerous individuals came forward to provide alibis for the suspects, claiming that they were in public on the day of the alleged and therefore could not have committed the crime. Approximately 50 individuals were involved or connected to Banaz's death in various capacities. Reflecting on the events, Caroline Good recalled feeling intense anger, disgust, and contempt for the men involved. She noted that 50 men had participated in the murder of one woman, and they took pride in their actions, which they saw as a demonstration of their masculinity. In March 2007, the trial against Mahmoud Babakar Mahmoud, Ari Mahmoud, and Mohammed Hamad began at London Central Criminal Court. Prosecutor Victor Temple described the crime as a cold-blooded and heartless execution that was orchestrated by the victim's father and uncle. In June 2007, a jury delivered finding all three defendants guilty of the charges and ineligible for leniency. The sentences handed down were severe. The father received a life sentence with a minimum of 20 years, the uncle was given life with a 23-year minimum, and cousin Mohammed Hama also received a life sentence with a minimum term of 17 years. Judge Brian Barker was scathing in his delivery of the verdict, stating, "You decided that your so-called family honor needed to be restored, which meant she had to die and her memory erased. This is a heinous and heartless crime. What kind of honor is it when a father prioritizes his social status over the life of his own child?" A mere 4 months after the trio's conviction, London police were informed that Muhammad Ali had been arrested in Iraq for a crime committed against a young boy. Muhammad Ali had taken his own life. Omar Hussein, the last of the 5 perpetrators, had been hiding in rural Iraq, attempting to avoid public detection. However, in December 2009, he was shot in the leg during an altercation with one of his brothers and required medical attention. Upon arriving at the hospital, police were notified and subsequently arrested him. Initially, Omar Hussein denied being in London in 2005, thereby claiming innocence in Banaz's death. But UK Social Security records revealed that he had been receiving refugee benefits during that time, contradicting his statement. The court ultimately sentenced him to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 21 years. Dana Amin was given an 8 years prison sentence for his role in disposing of Banaz Mahmoud's body and hindering the investigation. A recorded interview with Banaz at a police station implicated her family in the crime. Banaz had previously handed in a letter to a police station in South London, naming individuals who threatened to kill her and her boyfriend Rameth. The individuals named in the letter were from Banaz's family and the wider Iraqi Kurdish community. They were angry about her decision to divorce her husband, who treated her poorly. Despite several attempts to leave him, Banaz returned due to family pressure. The police failed to respond properly to Banaz's situation, which ultimately resulted in her death. However, this case prompted significant changes in how honor-related cases are handled. An inquiry into police misconduct was launched after Banaz's death, and an independent commission investigated 9 police officers for their inadequate response to her allegations. 7 officers received reprimands, and 2 were dismissed. It is essential to recognize the tireless efforts of Caroline Good and her team, who successfully located Banaz's body, secured the conviction of her father and uncle, and brought the escaped perpetrators back from Iraq. Banaz was laid to rest at the Merton and Sutton Joint Cemetery in Morden. A memorial service was held in her honor on June 26, 2007, at the MN Auditorium, followed by the installation of a granite memorial headstone at her gravesite. The memorial was attended by a small group of people, including Rameth Soleimani, Caroline Good, and Banaz's 2 sisters. Notably, Banaz's family did not attend either service. Rameth Soleimani, who had been living in the UK under witness protection, was profoundly affected by Banaz's death. He penned a heartfelt letter expressing his love and grief, describing Banaz as the love of his life and his entire world. Unfortunately, his pain and suffering continued, and in May 2016, 10 years after the tragedy, he took his own life. This was his third attempt to end his life, a devastating consequence of the trauma he had endured. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Vicki Roberts. Vicki Roberts was born in September 1984 in northwest England, where she was raised in a traditional and devoutly religious family. She was the younger of two daughters and was raised with strong Christian values. She attended a Christian school, where she also developed her musical talents and sang in the choir. Those who knew Vicki described her as a kind, friendly, and helpful person who was always willing to lend a hand. After completing high school, Vicki enrolled in university and took a part-time job at an IKEA store to support herself. It was there that she met Michael Roberts, and their initial friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. Michael was only a year older than her. Like Vicki, Michael balanced his studies with a part-time job at IKEA and made time for sports. He was also careful about his appearance and made a good impression on those around him. Vicki was initially put off by Michael's bold and outgoing personality, but she soon found herself developing strong romantic feelings for him. Michael was born in June 1983 in Warrington, Cheshire, to a family of modest means. His father was a successful chemical engineer who expected a lot from his two sons, particularly Michael, the eldest. As a result, Michael grew up with high ambitions and a strong sense of purpose. He was a diligent student and developed into a driven and accomplished individual. Michael was a social butterfly with many friends and was often the life of the party. However, he took the most pride on the love front. With his good looks, sense of humor, and charming personality, Michael was a catch. He was also intelligent and well-read, able to hold his own in conversations on a wide range of topics. Michael's parents had instilled in him the idea that he was exceptional, praising his intelligence, beauty, and potential for success. However, this upbringing may have also fostered narcissistic tendencies. Despite this, Michael felt a deep-seated need to live up to his parents' expectations and be the perfect son, driving him to strive for their approval. Michael had a series of brief relationships and frequently dated multiple people simultaneously. He was confident in his charm and enjoyed the thrill of pursuing women who seemed out of his reach. For Michael, this was a game, a challenge to be won. Vicki is one of the challenges he wants to conquer. She was a modest and unattainable woman who initially kept Michael at arm's length, refusing even casual invitations. Vicki was focused on her studies and spent her free time at church, leaving little room for dating or relationships. Michael, however, was determined to win her over. It took Michael a few months to win Vicki over, but eventually she agreed to go out with him. He had charmed her with his sweet gestures, flowers, gifts, and thoughtful surprises. He even invited her to meet his parents, who immediately took a liking to her and approved of their son's choice. Vicki was convinced that Michael was genuinely interested in her, so she gave in to his advances. He became her first serious partner, and she felt truly happy when she was with him. It seemed like fate had brought them together. Michael also appeared to be in love and ready to settle down, but their happiness was short-lived. From the outside, their relationship seemed perfect. They were both young, attractive, and full of energy and ambition, with big plans for the future. Vicki soon discovered that Michael had a strong and adventurous approach to sex, with a high sex drive and a desire to try new things in the bedroom. At first, Michael didn't pressure Vicki to engage in certain activities, fearing she would leave him. However, once he felt secure in their relationship, he revealed his true desires. Vicki, a modest and religious person, was shocked but deeply in love with Michael and trusted him, keeping their private life a secret. Things took a turn when Michael proposed to Vicki, and she happily accepted, believing that marriage would bring an end to his experimental behavior. However, Her closest friend began to notice Vicky covering up bruises and marks under her clothes. When confronted by her friend, Vicky initially denied any wrongdoing by Michael but eventually confessed that the marks were a result of Michael's affinity for bondage, toys, and other devices during their intimate moments. Vicky confided in her friend that she and Michael had intimate relations up to 5 times a week. Michael considered himself a skilled lover, viewing intimacy as an art form and a means of self-expression. Although he would occasionally compromise when Vicky refused to participate in his more extreme and reckless experiments, he usually managed to persuade her to give in to his desires. After graduating, Vicky became pregnant unexpectedly and decided to change careers. She soon landed a job as an account manager at a logistics company. Michael also left his job at IKEA and became a sales consultant at a large electronics retailer, selling phones, laptops, and other gadgets. Thanks to his charisma and persuasive abilities, he consistently exceeded his sales targets and quickly became one of the top-performing employees. Michael's success led to a promotion to senior sales, and he was being considered for a transfer to the company's main office. However, he needed to undergo additional training to improve his qualifications first. Michael enjoyed the training sessions and business trips to London, and he took great pride in his accomplishments. As a result, he often forgot about Vicky, his young fiancée, and only remembered her when he wanted intimacy. Vicky and Michael's relationship was lacking in several ways. They rarely spoke about each other or spent time together outside of the bedroom, making Vicky feel invisible to him. Meanwhile, Michael was secretly having affairs with coworkers, clients, and casual acquaintances. During this time, Vicky discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Michael, expecting him to be thrilled and expedite their wedding plans. Instead, he was furious and insisted that she terminate the pregnancy, citing their youth and the fact that they had their whole lives ahead of them. Vicky was shocked and refused to consider abortion. Michael then attempted to persuade Vicky by appealing to her concerns about her family. He claimed that her parents, who were deeply religious, would be angry and disappointed in her for becoming pregnant out of wedlock. However, Michael promised that if Vicky agreed to have an abortion, they could keep and plan to have children after they were married. Vicky was faced with a tough decision, but Michael's persistence eventually won her over, and she went to the hospital. Unfortunately, the experience was complicated, and Vicky had to stay in the hospital for a few days. It took her nearly 3 weeks to recover. During this time, her doctor strictly advised her against intimate relationships. When Michael found out, he became furious. It was then that Vicky realized Michael had mental health issues and an addiction to sex. Without intimacy, he became unbearable, frequently leaving the house, citing urgent work matters. Vicky suspects Michael is having an affair, and she hoped that getting married would help him change his ways and be more committed to their relationship. As it turned out, their relationship was loveless, and Michael was leading a double life. Their 2-year engagement was just a convenient arrangement for him, as he had a loyal partner waiting for him at home, taking care of the household, while he maintained a string of mistresses on the side, which he frequently replaced. Vicky always trusted Michael and forgave him whenever he cheated, as long as he promised it wouldn't happen again. However, as time passed, Vicky began to pressure Michael into getting married, as she wanted to start a family and have children. Her parents also brought up the topic frequently, but what really pushed Michael to consider marriage was the insistence of his own parents, whom he didn't want to disappoint. Michael's parents adored Vicky, thinking she was perfect for their son. They constantly asked him they would tie the knot and give them grandchildren. With the help of his parents, Michael and Vicky organized a grand wedding, complete with a white dress, limousine, and a beautiful ceremony. The newlyweds appeared to be in love and happy, with a long life ahead of them. After the wedding, they settled into a large, cozy house in a prestigious area of Warrington, close to Michael's parents. Despite their marriage, Michael didn't truly love Vicky. It was more of a way to appear normal to others. Vicky never expressed her concerns about Michael's unusual behavior and frequent infidelity, allowing him to freely change partners. Meanwhile, Michael's career was thriving. He received a promotion and a significant salary increase after being transferred to a new office. His direct supervisor was Carrie Hall, the head of administration at Phones for You. Carrie was a decade older than Michael, divorced, and raising her son independently. Despite her tough exterior, she was attractive, well put together, and strong-willed, as her position demanded. For a while, she ignored Michael's subtle advances, but to him, her indifference was a signal to take action. Michael set out to win over Carrie, using his natural charm and eloquence to capture her attention. After about a month, Carrie reciprocated his interest, and they began a regular affair, meeting in hotel rooms. Their relationship was intense and passionate, with a focus on experimentation and exploration. Carrie, a confident and mature woman, was flattered by the attention of the younger Michael. She was aware that Michael was unlikely to end his marriage for her. Michael, on the other hand, was eager to explore his desires with Carrie, which he felt he couldn't express with his wife. He would often lie to his wife about working late or attending corporate events, while confiding in Carrie about his unhappy marriage and his desire to divorce. However, he never made any concrete moves to end his marriage. The affair lasted for over a year, with Carrie seemingly content with the arrangement. She made no demands from Michael to leave his wife and was satisfied with their clandestine meetings and the excitement they brought. Carrie's behavior changed as she started dressing more conservatively, covering her body with long sleeves and high-necked clothing, a departure from her usual style that highlighted her athletic build. Carrie confided in her close friend about her lover Michael's extreme intimate experiments, which often crossed a line. She showed her friend the evidence, a bite mark on her chest and bruises on her neck from his intense grip. There were also marks on her wrists from the ropes he used to tie her up, giving him complete control. The friend was alarmed and urged Carrie to report the incidents to the police, but Carrie refused, explaining that the acts were consensual and Michael usually warned her about what he was going to do. However, the intensity of the experiences often got out of hand. For instance, Michael enjoyed choking his partner, claiming it would enhance the experience, but there were times when Carrie lost consciousness due to his excessive enthusiasm. Carrie's friend was fearful of Michael's strangulation games, but Carrie consistently gave in to his persuasion, believing that he would eventually stop or that she would become desensitized to the experience. Sadly, neither Carrie nor any of Michael's mistresses made any attempt to stop his cruel and painful experiments. Vicky had suspicions about her Michael's infidelity even before they got married. She believed that her love and care could change him and make him a devoted family man. However, after the wedding, his cheating continued and even worsened. When Michael denied his infidelity, Vicky decided to investigate on her own. One night, while Michael was asleep, Vicky checked his phone and found numerous intimate conversations with other women, including Carrie. She was shocked to discover that Michael had exchanged explicit photos with some of these women. The discovery was devastating for Vicky, and she packed her bags and temporarily moved in with a friend. Vicky kept her situation a secret from her family, fearing their reaction. She was afraid that her religious relatives would pressure her to get a divorce if they found out about Michael's adultery. Despite her heartbreak, Vicky still loved Michael and didn't want to give up on their marriage. Before leaving, she wrote him a heartfelt letter, confessing her love and telling him that he was the most important person in her life. Michael's wife had finally had enough of his promiscuous and decided to leave him. Before she went, she wrote him a handwritten note explaining that she knew about his cheating and couldn't take it anymore. She left the note on the refrigerator and gave him time to think about his actions, but made it clear that she wouldn't file for divorce just yet. Despite his wife's departure, Michael didn't seem to be particularly upset or remorseful. However, He did realize that he would miss having a quiet and submissive partner who took care of the household and tolerated his behavior. He decided to try to win her back and followed her to her friend's house, bringing a large bouquet of flowers. He apologized and begged her to return, promising to be faithful from then on. His wife, Vicky, wanted to believe him and decided to give him another chance. For a while, Michael made an effort to be more considerate and even came home for dinner. He deleted his correspondence with his mistress, Carrie, and changed his social media password to avoid suspicion. However, Michael's good behavior didn't last long. He soon started pursuing a new female employee, Karen Wilson, who was engaged to be married. Despite her initial reluctance, Michael persisted in his pursuit of her, and they began an affair. Meanwhile, he continued to see Carrie on the side, juggling multiple relationships at once. He became infatuated with a new woman and ended his relationship with 33-year-old Carrie Hall after 2 months, as he had grown tired of her. He told Karen a fabricated story about being unhappy in his marriage and claimed he was willing to leave his wife for her. Karen believed him, and they had an intimate encounter in the office. A week later, she ended her engagement, expecting Michael to follow through on his promise. Michael had no intention of divorcing his wife, Vicky, but he wanted to keep his new mistress. To keep her happy, he lied to her, telling her that he had already filed for divorce and was living with his parents. However, Vicky soon became suspicious that Michael was still cheating on her. She decided to take action and gathered evidence of his adultery. While Michael was in the shower, Vicky took his phone but found nothing incriminating because he had deleted all his text messages and changed his social media password. Undeterred, she waited until he fell asleep and then took his work laptop, where she found his social media account still logged in. There, she discovered messages between Michael and his new girlfriend, in which he professed his love and claimed to be divorcing Vicky and living with his parents. Vicky was shocked and took screenshots of the messages as proof of Michael's infidelity. She also found receipts for hotel rooms in his wallet. The next morning, she confronted Michael, presenting him with the evidence adultery. For the first time in their relationship, she lost her temper. Michael was taken aback and tried to apologize, promising it would never happen again. However, Vicky threatened to tell his parents about his infidelity, hoping they could talk some sense into him since she couldn't. Michael was enraged by his wife Vicky's threat to tell his parents about their problems. In a fit of anger, he slapped her. Vicky then got up and said she would go to his parents immediately, heading for the door. Michael caught up to her, grabbed a heavy jewelry box from the dresser, and hit her in the head twice, knocking her unconscious. He then strangled her with his bare hands until she stopped breathing. Feeling no remorse, Michael wrapped Vicky's body in a blanket, placed it in large garbage bags, and carried it to the garage. He quickly cleaned the house, packed up most of Vicky's belongings, and removed them. He then invited his lover, Karen, over, and they had dinner, had fun, and made love in the same bedroom where the murder had taken place. The next day, Michael ran off with Karen. He told his parents that Vicky had left him for another man, even showing them fake messages from Vicky's phone, which he had sent himself. He went to his parents' home, sobbing on his mother's shoulder, pretending to be distraught over his wife's supposed infidelity. Michael sent his parents-in-law messages saying that their daughter had left him for another man. He also told them to give her space and not to bother her. The messages claimed that Vicky had fallen out of love with Michael and had moved in with someone else. Her parents were shocked and tried to contact Vicky to hear her side of the story, but she refused to answer their calls, only responding with messages asking for time. Vicky's parents found Michael's story suspicious and went to his house to confront him. However, his explanation only raised more questions. They soon discovered that Vicky had not shown up for work, which further alarmed them. They decided to report their concerns to the police, leading to an investigation. On December 1, 2009, Michael bought a shovel, rope, rags, and cleaning supplies from a hardware store. However, the police arrived at his house on the same day. He had been caught before he could dispose of a body. The police initially found nothing out of the ordinary, but Michael's actions and alibi sparked suspicion and raised several questions. Notably, they overlooked a large package in the garage during their search. Inside the house, they found no signs of her presence, such as clothes, documents, or personal items, which could suggest she had left of her own accord. However, Vicky's laptop was discovered in the bedroom, and upon seizing it, the police found screenshots of Michael's incriminating conversations with his mistresses, which Vicky had saved. The investigation took a significant turn when authorities made a geolocation request to Vicky's cell phone, which had been regularly sending messages to her husband and relatives. To everyone's surprise, the phone was found to be located in the marital home of Vicky and Michael. This led to a second, more thorough search of the Roberts residence. During this search, a suspicious package was discovered in the garage, and its contents shocked all who were present. However, in a stunning twist, Michael, who had been cooperating with the police, suddenly vanished into thin air. He had taken a wallet containing cash, which allowed him to evade capture for several days. After his money ran out, Michael turned to one of his mistresses, Lavinia T., and asked if he could stay with her for a while. However, when Lavinia heard on the news that Michael was wanted for his wife's murder, she immediately contacted the police and reported his whereabouts. Eventually, he was arrested, put on trial, and convicted. When the authorities arrived to arrest Michael, he claiming he was innocent of the crime. A man claimed that his wife died accidentally during a consensual sex game where she asked him to strangle her with a rope belt, but he lost control. However, forensic experts disputed this claim, finding that she was actually strangled with bare hands, attacked from behind, and had 2 severe head injuries that occurred before her death, which were unrelated to the alleged sex game. The trial began in January 2010, with the defendant, Michael Roberts, maintaining that his wife's death was an accident and hoping for a lenient sentence. However, the autopsy results revealed a different story. Roberts had intentionally hit his wife on the head twice, then strangled her and hidden her body in the garage. As a result, Roberts was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nancy Paula Reyes. Nancy Paula Reyes Gores was born on April 13, 1991, in the small village of Granados in Guatemala. She grew up in a poor family with 4 siblings. Her parents, Jorge and Pren Gorzi, worked hard to provide for their children's education, hoping they could have a better life. Nancy attended school and later enrolled in the university in Delanua, where she studied business administration and document management. She was an exceptionally diligent student who earned top academic accolades. Despite her academic success, she struggled to find a promising career. During her studies, she worked as a cashier in a supermarket and was later promoted to administrator, but her career advancement stopped there. During her university years, Nancy was in a relationship with a young man and had 2 daughters. However, the relationship didn't work out, and they separated. The father did not financially support his children. Nancy continued to live with her parents, working at a supermarket, but saw no future prospects. With barely enough money for essentials, change was necessary. In 2013, her older sister moved to the United States, found a good job, got married, and settled well. Inspired by her sister's success, Nancy decided to transform her life. She chose to relocate to Europe, specifically Spain. At the time, she couldn't afford a one-way plane ticket or initial expenses. Nancy worked hard for years, saving enough to make her dream a reality. In July 2018, Nancy bought a ticket to Madrid, reassuring her parents that she would stay in touch regularly. Upon arrival, she planned to secure housing and a job. She brought a few €1,000 to cover initial expenses, such as renting a room and basic necessities, until she found stable employment. When Nancy left, she was 27 years old, and her daughters, who remained with their grandparents in Guatemala, were 7 and 5 years old. However, Nancy didn't stay in Madrid for long. She moved to Barcelona and later to Cadreal, a city in the Spanish province of the same name. Nancy maintained regular contact with her family, calling home almost daily to check on their well-being and sending money back to support them. Despite not having a stable job, Nancy managed to make a living through various odd jobs, including cleaning for affluent families and caring for the elderly and sick. She never complained about her hardships. Instead, she told her family that Europe offered better opportunities and that she could earn more than she would have in her home country, even if she worked non-stop with no days off. It seemed Nancy was content with her life. She even mentioned plans to bring her daughters to Spain once she had saved enough to rent a spacious home for the whole family. A significant romance developed in Nancy's life. Initially, she didn't reveal much about her personal life, citing a busy work schedule. However, in the spring of 2020, she told her parents that she had met a man named Carlos Andres Bustamante and started a romantic relationship with him. They met by chance while Nancy was searching for a new place to rent. As they navigated their challenges, they grew closer and eventually moved in together. Carlos, who was a year older than Nancy, didn't have a steady income at the start of their relationship and relied on odd jobs to get by. As a result, Nancy became the primary breadwinner, covering housing costs, bills, and often providing Carlos with money for his personal expenses. However, she never complained to her family about this, so they believed everything was fine and that she had found a good partner in Carlos, with whom she lived a happy and fulfilling life. Around that time, Nancy's 2 younger brothers also moved to Spain, and she kept in touch with them. She was especially close to her youngest brother, Dennis, who had met Carlos and thought he was likable. In late June 2020, Nancy and Carlos decided to relocate to Santander, a coastal city in northern Spain. When Nancy spoke to her family on the phone, she mentioned that the climate was better and there were more job opportunities. However, issues began to arise in her relationship with Carlos, which she tried to keep to herself. Carlos was jealous, hot-headed, and cruel. He was content with being financially supported by Nancy and lacked ambition. What's more, he had a problem with alcohol and occasionally used illicit substances. Although he frequently promised to quit and find a stable job, Nancy started to doubt whether she should continue the relationship. When Nancy discovered she was pregnant, Carlos seemed overjoyed and promised a better life. However, his behavior worsened. He continued to drink and use drugs, taking money from Nancy or his mother. Carlos also started physically abusing Nancy, who tried to hide this from others. On August 12, while Nancy video chatted with her parents, Carlos yelled at her, demanding that she tell him who she was talking to. Despite her explanation, he snatched the phone, verified the caller, and then threw the phone onto a chair before walking away. The next day, Carlos repeated this behavior, grabbing the phone from Nancy while she spoke to her family. He insulted and threatened her, leaving Nancy frightened. However, she told her relatives that Carlos's behavior was due to jealousy and insisted that everything was fine. Her parents urged her to contact the police, but Nancy believed she could handle the situation herself. On August 17, Nancy had a concerning phone conversation with her sister. She stated that if anything happened to her, Carlos would be responsible. Although her words were alarming, she didn't explain further and instead asked her sister to care for her children if necessary. This was the last time Nancy's sister heard from her. Nancy, who was pregnant, mysteriously vanished on August 20th. At around 2 p.m., she texted her father, promising to call later that evening, but she never did. It was unusual for her not to follow through on her promise or respond to her family's calls. When her family tried to contact Carlos, he didn't answer his phone either. The situation was worrying, especially since they had recently moved to Santander and had no friends there. Nancy's brothers lived on the other side of the country, making it difficult for them to check on her immediately. A few days later, a suspicious message was sent from Carlos's phone, stating that he and Nancy had argued and decided to separate. According to the message, Nancy had packed her belongings and left to find her own apartment, was ignoring Carlos's calls, and he had no idea where she was. Nancy brothers suggested that Carlos come to Ciudad Real so they could report Nancy missing to the police together. Carlos agreed but didn't show up or file the report. He also stopped communicating with Nancy's family. Nancy's relatives reported her disappearance to the police themselves. Meanwhile, her brothers found Carlos's mother's, Sandra Bustamante, address through Nancy's friends. When they visited Sandra and explained the situation, she burst into tears. She confessed that she suspected her son was capable of harming Nancy, but didn't provide any details. Sandra didn't know where Carlos and Nancy were. Carlos wouldn't answer her calls, only sending brief messages telling her not to ask questions and to give him time. The next day, Sandra is questioned at the police station about Nancy's disappearance and the whereabouts of her son, Carlos. Sandra shared the same information she had told Nancy's brothers the day before and showed the police a long text message Nancy had sent her before she went missing. In the message, Nancy begged Sandra not to give Carlos any money, no matter what sad stories he might tell her. Nancy said Carlos would spend the money on alcohol and drugs, which made him aggressive and cruel. He had no intention of finding a job or overcoming his addictions, and his behavior was becoming increasingly threatening. As a result, Nancy was considering leaving him and thought it would be better to end things before anyone got hurt. The investigation also uncovered a disturbing fact about Carlos. He had been convicted of causing physical harm several times before. One of his first victims was his own mother, whom he severely beat when he was 17 years old. At the time, he was given probation. However, after leaving his family's home, he served short sentences for assaulting women he lived with and tried to have relationships with. The investigation was just getting underway, but within the first few days, several intriguing details came to light that suggested the union between Carlos and Nancy was troubled from the start. Carlos had a history of aggression, was unemployed, struggled with addiction, had a criminal record, and was prone to uncontrollable rage. Nancy's occupation wasn't as straightforward as she claimed. Her work generated substantial income, more than a housekeeper or caregiver could earn. In reality, Nancy offered escort services to wealthy individuals, including Spanish and other tourists, which is why she moved to Santander. Carlos initially accepted Nancy's occupation as it supported them financially. However, upon learning of her pregnancy, he became consumed by doubts about the child's paternity and grew intensely jealous of her continued work. His behavior became erratic, fluctuating between forbidding her from interacting with men and pressuring her to work for money. The man spent the money he took from his mother solely on himself and his vices. A disturbing discovery was made in a rented apartment, where Nancy and Carlos had been missing for nearly a week. Although Carlos had been in contact, he only sent messages and didn't reveal his location. On August 26, the police finally obtained a warrant to search their empty rental apartment in Santander, and what they found was shocking, leaving no doubt that Nancy was deceased. Blood was found throughout the apartment, with some attempts to clean it up. However, it was still visible in many areas. Further investigation revealed fragments of bones, hair, skin, and internal organs in the clogged drains of the bathroom and toilet. Forensic analysis confirmed that these remains belonged to the missing woman, Nancy. Although Nancy's body was not found in the apartment, evidence suggested that she had been brutally murdered and dismembered in the bathroom. Her remains were likely disposed of elsewhere. Carlos became the prime suspect in the case, but his whereabouts were unknown. A package for a small hatchet was found in the apartment with Carlos' clear fingerprints on it. Security footage from a local hardware store showed Carlos purchasing the hatchet, rubber gloves, and large trash bags on August 20th. He bought a small cart from an elderly vendor who instantly recognized him from a photo. This led to his arrest and the start of a search for the body. The next day, Carlos went to a police station in Madrid. Trying to deflect suspicion from himself, he went to report Nancy missing but was immediately arrested as the main suspect in the gruesome crime. Carlos claimed he had no involvement, stating that he and Nancy had argued and parted ways on August 20th. He said he left the town in an emotional state and was unaware of any events involving Nancy afterward. He suggested that Nancy might have been attacked when she returned to the apartment to gather her belongings. However, his story was unconvincing, especially after police found his fingerprints on the hatchet packaging. In the following days, police thoroughly searched nearby wastelands, sewer systems, and the coastline with the help of dogs, but found no sign of Nancy. They then tracked Carlos's movements from August 20th to 26th using his mobile phone signals. The results showed he spent 3 days traveling along the coast, visiting the cities of Bilbao and Burgos before heading to Madrid. It was evident that Carlos attempted to conceal his actions. The investigation continued in Santander. On August 20th, surveillance footage revealed Carlos walking towards a large natural forest park in the evening. He returned to his apartment late at night and then exited again with a cart containing irregularly shaped bags. Carlos vanished from view upon entering the wooded area due to limited camera coverage. He reappeared later with a much lighter cart. After proceeding towards the railway tracks, he returned significantly lighter, indicating where the body might be. However, one question remained unanswered: where was the child? It wasn't until September 16th that authorities discovered bags containing severely decomposed human remains in dense underbrush on a hillside. The remains were identified as those of the missing Nancy Gores, which had been divided into 20 parts using a hatchet, as revealed by security camera footage. While all items transported in the cart were recovered, something was still missing. Nancy's 4-month-old fetus was not found among the remains. The victim's genitals and lower abdomen showed severe injuries from a knife and hatchet. This suggests that the perpetrator removed the fetus and got rid of it separately from the mother's body. Carlos denied being involved and gave conflicting statements. He tried to blame someone else, but the victim's blood was found on his clothes and shoes, which he had tried to wash off. Even though Carlos wouldn't admit to the crime, investigators figured out what happened. Experts think that on the afternoon of August 20th, the man got into an argument with his pregnant partner. He then brutally beat and strangled her in the kitchen, where blood was found on the floor and walls. Carlos moved Nancy's body to the bathroom. Afterward, he went shopping at a hardware store and the market. Using a hatchet and a large kitchen knife, he divided Nancy's body into 20 parts in the bathroom. He placed the pieces into bags, loaded everything into a cart, and then went to the park to look for secluded places to dispose of the body. Late at night, he followed a pre-planned route deep into the park, scattering the bags in various locations, hoping they would never be found. During his trial, Carlos denied his guilt and claimed he loved Nancy. The whereabouts of the fetus he removed from her body remain unknown. From the time of the crime until his arrest in Madrid, Carlos lived off the money he stole from Nancy. He spent the money daily in bars across various cities. It took law enforcement nearly 2 years to investigate, gather evidence, and find witnesses, and the murder trial is scheduled to start in July 2022. In November of the same year, Carlos was found guilty of the premeditated, brutal murder of Nancy and her unborn child, as well as the dismemberment and desecration of her body. However, many considered the sentence handed down to the murderer to be too lenient. Carlos received a prison sentence of 25 years and 6 months. He was also required to pay €150,000 in compensation to Nancy's parents and daughters. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lindsay Birbeck. Lindsay was born in Blackburn, Lancashire, northwest England. She and her husband, Tim Birbeck, separated in July 2018, but they continued living together until March 2019. At that time, Lindsay moved to a new home on Burnley Road in Hanko. As a mother, Lindsay cared for her 2 adult children, Divin, 20, and Sarah, 17. Professionally, she worked as a teacher's aide at Atton Hill Elementary School in Burnley. She enjoyed being around children and was known for her artistic talent. Lindsay would often go the extra mile to create impressive props for school productions. On August 12, Lindsay went for a walk in the wooded area of Coppice, near her Hanko home. However, when her daughter Sarah and Sarah's boyfriend Brandon arrived at the house for a scheduled tea party, Lindsay was nowhere to be found. This was unusual, as Lindsay was not one to forget appointments. Sarah tried calling Lindsay multiple times, but there was no answer. She sent Lindsay a text message saying, "Where are you?" We sat outside for an hour and called 6 times. When Lindsay didn't respond, Sarah sent another message with a series of question marks, but still received no reply. After waiting for an hour outside Lindsay's house, Sarah called her father, Tim Birbeck, since her mother was not home and not answering her phone. Tim took Sarah and her brother Brandon to his house around midnight. Later, Sarah and Tim went back to Lindsay's house with a spare set of keys, but Lindsay was nowhere to be found. The house looked undisturbed, and there were no signs of anything out of the ordinary or a note explaining Lindsay's whereabouts. At 12:11 a.m. on August 13th, Tim contacted the police to report Lindsay missing, stating, "Lindsay seems to be missing. We can't find her." Lindsay's disappearance shocked the community, prompting a massive search effort. Hundreds of people, including families with strollers and teenagers, joined the search, even if they didn't know Lindsay personally. After days of searching, posting on social media, and putting up posters, the community gathered at a local spot called Coppice for 2 days, hoping to find a clue to help solve the mystery of Lindsay's disappearance. The search continued non-stop despite the challenges. Thousands of posters with Lindsay's picture were distributed throughout the neighborhood. A Facebook group to aid the search gained 10,000 members. Posters soon appeared everywhere, including lamp posts, storefronts, and traffic lights, asking for help in finding Lindsay. Police launched a thorough investigation into Lindsay's disappearance, conducting extensive searches around her house and the surrounding countryside. A team of specialists, including police officers, dog handlers, firefighters, and mountain rescue volunteers, scoured the area. They also deployed drones and helicopters to cover a wide range, including popular walking and running routes. For days after Lindsay went missing, police released CCTV footage showing her last seen walking along Burnley Road towards Coppice at 4:10 p.m. She was wearing a distinctive purple jacket, black leggings, and dark sneakers with white soles. As a week passed since her disappearance, hopes of finding Lindsay alive began to dwindle. Despite the efforts of the police, her whereabouts remained a mystery. However, the police emphasized that there was no evidence to suggest she was the victim of a crime, leaving a glimmer of hope that she might still be found alive. That evening, hundreds of local residents joined forces for the first mass public search of Coppice, following a rallying call on social media. A local resident's dog ran into the woods at Errington Cemetery, prompting its owner to follow. The dog didn't respond to its owner's calls, instead hiding its head in the bushes and sniffing at something. As the owner approached, they felt something soft underfoot, which frightened them. A terrible smell and swarming flies surrounded a plastic bag, with what appeared to be a foot visible. On August 24, Lindsay Bubek's body was discovered 12 days after her disappearance. Her naked body was buried in the cemetery, wrapped in 2 clear plastic bags and mixed with earth and grass, in a shallow grave. With this discovery, the search for Lindsay Bubek was concluded, and a murder investigation officially began. Pathologist Dr. Naomi Carter conducted an autopsy and found that the cause of death was a broken neck, likely caused by a forceful blow from a foot or knee. The trauma was so severe that the entire larynx was crushed. Additionally, it appeared that someone had attempted to cut off the right leg after death, possibly using a saw, leaving a large laceration that cut down to the bone. Due to the poor condition of the body, Dr. Carter had difficulty determining the full extent of the injuries. While she couldn't rule out the possibility of sexual activity on the day of the disappearance, the level of decomposition made it impossible to confirm. Before the body was found, the area had been searched by police and community volunteers for several days, but nothing was discovered. A blue wheelie garbage can was spotted in nearby bushes, but its significance was not yet realized at that stage of the investigation. Volunteers searched the cemetery on August 20th at 9 p.m. and found a dumpster with a dark stain that they suspected might be blood. They took pictures and called the police, who arrived to inspect the dumpster. However, the police officers thought the dark stain was just dirt and noted that the dumpster looked new. With no evidence linking it to Lindsay's disappearance, they left it in place. Other clues were found in the cemetery but weren't immediately considered significant. Christine Alderson, a local resident, discovered a bloody cloth on the grass on August 18th while walking her dogs. She believed the blood was fresh but thought it might belong to a homeless man who often visited the area. Judith Bibby, another dog walker, reported seeing what was likely Lindsay's jacket hanging on a barbed wire fence near the Cardiel Hill Trail. On August 25th, investigators returned to the crime scene and discovered a yellow-handled saw and a pair of green heavy-duty gloves near Lindsay's grave. The gloves had blood on them and were sent for forensic testing. The test results showed that the gloves contained the perpetrator's DNA on the inside and Lindsay's DNA on the outside of the left glove. Additionally, investigators found a pair of Lindsay's Skechers sneakers in a blue plastic bag in the cemetery. The shoes had been cut along the sole. Further examination revealed that Lindsay's body was wrapped in plastic sheeting, with foliage and grass that didn't match the cemetery grounds between her body and the sheeting. This led investigators to believe that Lindsay's body had been moved from another location. The discovery of the moved body led detectives to recall a blue trash can that had caught the attention of volunteers. Upon reviewing CCTV footage, police officers made a surprising discovery that left the investigation team perplexed. Several images showed a young man pulling a blue wheelie garbage can in the Burley Road area over the course of a few days. A CCTV camera caught the same individual returning to the cemetery on 4 separate occasions. This footage helped identify a suspect. A video of the young man carrying a trash can down the street, possibly containing Lindsay's body, gained widespread attention. The video was broadcast on the news with a request for help identifying the individual, which proved successful. The individual in the video was identified as Rocky Marciano Rocky, a local resident who lived with his parents and 5 siblings on Winnie Hill Road in Arrington. The Rocky family had resided in this home for approximately 3 decades. Rocky struggled with a range of mental health issues, including autism, attention deficit disorder, and hyperactivity, which he had experienced since childhood. Additionally, his low IQ presented challenges with learning and communication. Rocky attended an alternative school in Barnoldswick several days a week, where teachers described him as a quiet and nonverbal student. In 2015, a psychologist evaluated Rocky and found he had difficulty understanding his emotions and how they related to events. A 2016 report noted that Rocky was unresponsive to strangers and required constant supervision. According to Timothy Bradley, a teacher at his school, Rocky showed little interest in academics, preferring practical activities. He rarely engaged in conversations, even about topics that interested him. Rocky was physically strong and enjoyed activities like going to the gym, caring for chickens, and playing Xbox. Rocky often seemed detached from reality and unaware of his actions. His attack on Lindsay Bubeck appeared to be motivated by a desire to kill a woman, and she happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The murder was a random act committed by a stranger. On August 12, 2020, 1 year after the crime, Rocky Marciano went on trial. After an 8-day retrial and 4 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict. Rocky, 17, showed no reaction via video link from Her Majesty's Prison, Weatherby. His parents, present in court, also remained expressionless. Rocky had pleaded guilty to aiding in the disposal of Lindsay's body but denied any role in her death. He claimed a male stranger approached him and offered a fee to help bury she. In a prepared statement, Rocky admitted to moving the garbage can and burying the body, but maintained he had no involvement in Lindsay's death. However, evidence collected from his home in Arrington, including identical plastic bags found at Lindsay's grave and a tracksuit matching the one he wore in surveillance footage from August 12, 16, and 17, contradicted his claims. Defense attorney Mark Van Hull stated to the jurors that although Rocky committed a reprehensible act by burying her body in the cemetery, he maintains that Rocky was not responsible for her death, despite the substantial evidence against him. The judge sentenced Rocky to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. He will be eligible for release only when the parole board determines he is no longer a danger to society. The judge described the attack as swift and brutal, and stated that Rocky clearly intended to kill a woman who was walking in the area just minutes before Lindsay's murder. Security footage shows that Rocky Price made 2 return visits to the location where Lindsay was killed on the evening of August 12. At 6:55 p.m., he was captured on CCTV carrying a black backpack, likely containing a saw to dismember the victim's body. At 8:28 p.m., he was seen at the same location, where he would eventually dispose of the body. With no visible signs of panic or distress, Rocky Price carried out a calculated plan to dispose of Lindsay's body. He carefully placed it in a blue trash can, wrapping it in 2 plastic bags, before burying it in a shallow grave at Arrington Cemetery. The fact that he stalked another woman before killing Lindsay Bubeck indicates that his crime was premeditated, rather than a spontaneous loss of control. Lindsay's funeral took place at St. Margaret's Church in Hapton on September 20th. Over 200 people attended the service, which was briefly interrupted by police stopping traffic on Manchester Road to allow Lindsay's coffin, adorned with flowers, to be carried into the church. The scene was filled with dozens of bouquets from friends, family, and strangers who were moved by Lindsay's story.